News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, July 30th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 14 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Olympic elation, but also crushing disappointment this morning. Melissa Bishop from Eganville failing to qualify for the 800-meter semis, finishing fourth in her heat. Trampoline and swimmers finish just off the podium as well. But we've also had success.
Canada's women's 8 rowers powered to a first-place finish to give the nation its 3rd gold medal and 11th medal overall at the Tokyo Games. Trampoline gymnast Rosie McLennan had hoped to add to that total when she competed later in the day, but the 2-time Olympic champion finished 4th in her event. Canadian divers Jennifer Abel and Pamela Ware both qualified for the semifinal of the women's 3-meter springboard event. Abel from Laval, Quebec, was 3rd in the preliminary round, while Ware of Greenfield Park, Quebec, was 4th. Abel is looking for her 2nd medal in the Tokyo Games after winning silver in the 3-meter synchro. And both Canadians struggled in their 2nd round of the men's Olympic golf tournament. Mackenzie Hughes of Dundas, Ontario, shooting a 1/72, dropping into a tie for 39th, while Corey Connors of Listowel, Ontario, is tied for 34th overall at 2 under par after 16 holes. Play was suspended due to inclement weather. From the Canadian Press, I'm Rob Westgate.
City News Time, 9:01, and now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
May see a few scattered showers this morning in Ottawa and then mostly to partly cloudy conditions today. Highs only 19. Clear breaks into the overnight and a cool low near 11 degrees. Sun and cloud for Saturday. Chance of showers. Highs near 21. The daytime high today, 19.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 14 degrees. StatsCan says the economy appears to have grown in the second quarter of the year despite a couple of months of setbacks. The agency says the preliminary estimate is the economy grew at a rate of 2.5% between April and June. Now, StatsCan says the preliminary estimate is that real GDP grew in June as pandemic restrictions began to ease right across Canada. The agency says with that growth in June, total economic activity about 1% below what it was pre-pandemic. A provincial mask mandate would be best if it continues into the fall. That's according to Ottawa's top doctor. Here's Chris Curries.
Many provinces have started relaxing COVID-19 restrictions, including mask mandates, and Ottawa's own municipal bylaw set to expire on August 26th. But Dr. Vera Etches says it's always better to be safer, especially when we're all so interconnected.
It is true we have federal guidance when someone has 2 doses of COVID vaccine and they're gathering with other people who have 2 doses, that masks aren't required when people feel comfortable in that situation. If they don't have significant underlying health concerns. The challenge is often we don't know the immunization status of others in the workplace or others in a crowd.
The Chief Medical Officer of Health says she's spoken with Dr. Kieran Moore, the province's top doc, about implementing it Ontario-wide, in particular after they move out of Step 3, which is when Premier Ford has said many restrictions will be removed or further relaxed. Chris Curries, City News.
And we'll have more coming up with Dr. Etches on the Rob Snow Show this morning. And the FBI is investigating what one commercial airline pilot said may have been an airborne person wearing a jetpack high in the busy skies near LAX. The Los Angeles Times says a Boeing 747 pilot radioed this week on Wednesday of a possible jetpack man in sight. The FAA confirms that report. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Friday. We made it. Is there a wind chill today? A little on the chilly side for July. I was actually looking at the monthly weather statistics this morning for the month of July, which is soon coming to an end, and it's been about average, really, except for the precipitation. It has been on the wet side of things. But so far this month, So far this month, tomorrow being the last day of July, the average daytime high has been 25 degrees, and the average overnight low has been 14.4 degrees, and the hottest it was all month was 30.8 degrees, and that was on the 6th of July, and we had only one 30-degree day all month. 1 30-degree day all month. But as of yesterday, we had 104 millimeters of rain, which is about twice as much as we had last July. I'm on vacation in a few hours, so it could warm up a little for me. Okay, cooperate. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. It's a great Friday fare for you on the way. Best-selling author, legendary broadcaster, keeper of fine pigeons, Lowell Green will join me in a few minutes. He always has a hot take on the news of the day. Bork will be back. Pierre Bork from Bork News Watch. We'll do the Queen's Park Week in Review. So much to get into when you talk about what's going on in Ontario these days. Back-to-school plan coming out next week. We talked a lot about mandatory vaccinations this week. Vaccine certificates is controversial as ever. And there's the situation with the backlog of medical procedures. The Ford government announced this week putting more than $230 million into that to try and catch up on the backlog. A stunning number from the new president of the Ontario Medical Association yesterday. The Ontario Medical Association president told me yesterday the backlog in medical procedures in Ontario is 16 million. Everything from cataracts to hip replacements, bypass surgery, MRIs, everything else under the sun. Can you imagine 16 million? There are only 14 million people in the entire province. And he told us that if you're in, say, for example, you're in the market for knee surgery these days or hip surgery, 22 months. Almost 2 years. 22 months. I mean, the wait times were long before. They've only gotten longer because of the pandemic. And it's one thing for the government to try and, throw money at the thing. Sure, it needs more money. And sure, you can say to the hospitals, we want you to be running at 120% capacity. The big challenge, the experts tell me, the big challenge is people. It's a human resources issue. Operating rooms, sure. Okay, we have operating rooms. We need people staffing the operating rooms. MRIs is one thing. We need experts to run the MRI machines. The big challenge is people. We don't have enough people. We need more healthcare workers of every conceivable variety. And we're really up against the wall with nurses. Big nursing shortage in Ontario that is only about to get worse. And by all accounts, I've heard it from those in the profession. The Americans are recruiting Canadian nurses like crazy now. Once more, I remember this in the 90s. I have a few members of my own family who took the Americans up on their offers years ago. Trained in Canada, but said, see you later. Decided it was better to be a nurse in the United States. Better working conditions and better pay. But my gosh, 16 million medical procedures. Hard to wrap your head around a number like that. How are we ever going to get caught up on that? What else do we have on tap today? We will talk about COVID-19, our fight against COVID-19 with Dr. Vera Etches, Ottawa's medical officer of health, coming up at 9:45 this morning. So much ground to cover off with her. In sports, not so much the Olympics. I'm trying to get into the Olympics, but I'm having a difficult time. But we'll talk a little bit about the Olympics, but I really want to get the lowdown on all the moves that the Ottawa Senators made this week. Sens made some signings, said goodbye to some players, extended the contract to the coach. I am a very optimistic Ottawa Senators fan, and we'll get into all the moves that the Sens made this week with the host of the Sens Nation podcast, Steve Warren. We're even going to talk about fine art this morning. Can you imagine on the Rob Snow Show? Okay, that is not usually my bailiwick. But at the National Gallery of Canada, which is a sponsor of this show, and we appreciate that, on now till September 6th is Rembrandt in Amsterdam. I bet you that's pretty good, David. It is a trip back to the 1630s. Sounds pretty cool. I like going to the gallery from time to time. I will make a point of going to see that. You get a radio preview this morning from Denise Cieli. The last time she was on my show, we were talking politics because she is very in tune with the federal political scene, but we're not talking politics today. We're talking fine art. We're talking Rembrandt. Politics, that's the art of the possible. Every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock on the Rob Snow Show, we turn the show over to you. We call it the Talk Back Hour. It's an hour of phone calls. It's an hour of opinions, and it's the hottest hour of talk radio in town. And today, it's the Friday free-for-all. And we love that hour around here because we don't come up with the topics. You come up with the topics, and just about anything goes. And we just kind of do our best to roll with it. We covered a lot of subject material during the Talkback Hour this week. We can revisit some of those issues. If you didn't get a chance to sound off on them, we'll save you a spot today at 750-1310. You know, it's strange what gets people going sometimes. There's so many serious issues that we could get into, right? You think of all the things that would prompt debate and discussion on a talk radio program. Mandatory vaccines, vaccine passports, back to school, the economy, wearing masks, the deficit, taxes, climate change, inflation, the upcoming election, Trudeau scandals, take your pick, right? Hottest topic on the Rob Snow Show this week, pickup trucks. The culture warriors are coming for your pickup truck. Globe and Mail calls them a scourge. Another columnist says they should be banned altogether. You should only be allowed to buy one if you need one for work. That had the phones ringing off the hook. I'll sell you my truck if you want it, by the way. These gas prices, I mean, they have me waving the white flag. I give up. Mr. Trudeau, guts, glory, ram, you win. Okay? Take it. Take it. Hey, one topic that I haven't had a chance to ask you about, I'm hoping that we can get into this morning, if you would be so kind as to indulge me. Stephen Harper, even though he hasn't been prime minister for 6 years, just all over the news this week, all over Twitter, just people going crazy because of his appearance on an American podcast. And the reaction was about, well, as you would expect, all right? Liberals and New Democrats just losing their mind, their heads exploding. And conservatives, you wanted to hand them a tissue. They wish the man had never left, and they're praying that he will come back. But as I said in my daily commentary this morning, he's not coming back. Okay, I know that. I think you know that too, right? But, what ifs are always fun. I love what ifs, especially when it comes to politics. So, what if Harper came back? What would you think of that? Do the dance of joy? What if Harper came back? How would you feel about that? Do you think Harper would have the Conservative Party doing better in the polls than Aaron O'Toole is doing right now? Do you think Harper could win the election? 10 years ago, Stephen Harper carried the blue team to a strong, stable, conservative majority government. You think he could pull that off again? Or is Stephen Harper yesterday's man? Lowell Green is our Renaissance man. And he's next. Here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show, brought to you by Meyer.
It's a space that needs to be lived in. It's a space that people, have to have an experience of more than just art on the walls. I think, yes, the art on the walls is fun, and it's fun to walk around and see all the beautiful things, and the way Dominic and Edith have curated the gallery is certainly something worth seeing. But coming by and asking questions, again, to Dominic's point of view is, interrupt him, ask questions. I'm here on most of the days too. We have Luce that comes in, Nancy that comes in. So yeah, we have quite a few opportunities for people to come in and see the process, and of course ask a few questions. It's a great space. Basically, the one event that we did do, is the jazz shows, the jazz and blues shows. And I think the weird thing to let you know is that the acoustics in here are really amazing. I think that was the first thing that blew me away when we started doing shows, or when I was helping out with the shows. The other part of the business too is we do rent it out for special occasions too. So a few weddings, birthday parties, product launches, that kind of thing. So they're also a lot of fun. We do have one artist that's from the States, but of the 30 odd artists, the rest are from either Quebec, Ontario, and one beautiful woman from BC. But yeah, it's definitely part of the philosophy to maintain and canvas and show the beauty that we have in our backyard. You have the very, very strong personalities in Edith and Dominic, of course. It's wonderful to see how that actually balances out in the rest of the gallery. Without necessarily being, an objective, we basically have half female artists and half male artists in this gallery. But I can't say it's anything more than choosing the best people, and that's just the way it is. And I love that. I think it's great. You go through and you're like, wow, it's all pretty cool. And yep, it's half are women and half are men. It's cool. Like everyone else, we didn't know what to think, right? It's overwhelming at first. So you just know that things are closed. And now you're trying to figure out what you do during that downtime, which I think everyone did. And I think in March, the first close, the first shutdown, it was a lot of actually recuperating and resting and not worrying too much on the spot. It's running a gallery is a bit like running a marathon with sprints. So there comes a time where, it's actually nice to just take a break. And then you wake up and realize that, okay, now it's time to wake up and deal with this new reality. From my perspective anyways, I think a gallery can be overwhelming, and I like to make it fun. So you're going to come in, I'll ask you questions, I might even joke around with you. The most people come here, they're not really going to buy art, but they could have a fun time and talk about it, right? And one of the things the gallery does offer is for local purchases, we'll be happy to drive it to your house and hang it for you.
150.
Pickup truck, yeah. Shouldn't be allowed. Shouldn't be allowed, Lowell. Shouldn't be allowed.
And the number 2 vehicle sold in Canada today?
Probably a pickup truck as well.
No, SUVs.
Oh,
actually.
an SUV.
Which really raises the question.
SUVs are fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but it raises the question, what the hell is Trudeau's carbon tax all about? The carbon tax is intended to discourage people from buying pickup trucks and SUVs and going back into smart cars. Well, it's obviously not working, although apparently in your case you're prepared to sell your truck?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
but for a good profit, right?
Well, I hear they're in demand right now. I might actually get a good price for it, actually. So.
No, but it's really strange because, all of the carbon tax, as you know, is adding, about 33 cents per liter of gas today. But it doesn't seem to be working, does it? People are not driving less. They're not driving smaller vehicles.
No.
They're driving bigger vehicles, and they certainly aren't driving any less. So very clearly, the carbon tax, at least when it comes to transportation, is not working.
It's just this whole worldview that, I don't like the kind of vehicle you drive, so I don't think you should be allowed to drive it.
But I have to tell you, my granddaughter has a new boyfriend.
Oh yeah,
a very very nice young man.
That's good.
And he pulled up the other day in a smart car. You know what I mean by looks like a little bug, right?
Yeah.
But how many smart cars do you see on the road around here?
Not many.
Too many. Right?
I don't even know if they make them anymore to tell you.
I'm not sure either. I'm not. In Europe, of course, everybody buys a smart car.
Right.
But the other thing that's really interesting about vehicle purchase, last year, less than 4% of all new vehicles sold in Canada were either all electric or hybrid. So this idea that somehow or other in a few years we're all going to be driving electric cars, I do not believe it.
I think probably in 10, 15 years, they're probably going to be a lot more mainstream than they are
Well, there may
now.
be a few more, but I'm going to... Number one, first of all, we don't have the grid. We don't have the infrastructure to serve. Where would we get all of the electricity? Supposing that by
From the windmills, silly. From the windmills.
Yeah, right. No, but we would have... Do you understand the billions of dollars it would take? We would have to totally redo the grid, the electrical grid. We've already had to redo the grid for the windmills and the solar panels, for God's sake. We know what that's done to our electrical bills. Can you imagine what would happen if every other house had an electric vehicle parked in their driveway? Where the hell would the power come from? I mean, I just don't think that... you know what? I think it's all just farts in the windstorm. I think that this is just Trudeau just playing with us, you know? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Well, the federal government says they're not even going to allow automakers to sell gasoline-powered cars by the year 2035.
Right. Well, I'll believe it. Well, I'm not going to be around to see it, but I just cannot see it. All of the inducements that we have. Don't forget that less than 5% of all vehicles sold in Canada last year, as I say, hybrid or electric, despite the fact that there is a very major government subsidy to buy the damn things. So even the government can't even bribe us to buy the electric vehicles. Let's be honest here.
All right. What do you think about, let's get on to other things. What do you think about our fight against COVID these days and the vaccines?
The news is good, and I don't think the media has played this up enough. I reported last week that CBS told us that 99.7% of all new COVID cases throughout the entire United States were among unvaccinated people. Yesterday, the District of Peel, which is, as you know, a suburb of Toronto, which has been a hotspot, reported that 100% of all new COVID cases in Peel were among the unvaccinated. Here in Ottawa, we get a story that more than 99% of all new COVID cases are among the unvaccinated. So there we go. There's the definitive proof that the vaccination works, and it's working very, very well. And in fact, increasingly, doctors and others are saying that COVID is becoming a disease of the unvaccinated.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, as far as vaccination passports, it seems to me, Rob, that the real problem began when we began to describe the documentation as passport. There seems to be some sort of public, reaction against the word passport.
Yeah.
I mean, we already have some documentation, as you know. When you get your second shot, you get in Ontario, you get a thing from the Ontario government, which unfortunately can be forged. Whether or not we need a domestic passport or documentation, I don't know. I think the jury is still out. However, there is no question that we've got to have federal documentation, passport or whatever, to prove that we've had 2 shots in order for us to travel internationally. My daughter and her mother got caught just late last week. They flew from the Bahamas. They did all they were supposed to do into Fort Lauderdale. They had a documentation that they'd had the 2 shots, et cetera, et cetera. They were tested in the Bahamas. But when they went to get on their Air Canada flight to Ottawa, Air Canada said, no, we don't know if the Bahamas test is good enough. They made them stay overnight. It was unbelievable. It cost them an extra $1,000. Okay. So very clear. There's family proof that we've got to have some sort of official federal documentation for international travel. No question about it, in my mind. Okay. And you have another question, which I think is very important.
All right.
And that is, should those who should healthcare workers, particularly those in long-term care, and I think also the question of teachers, should they be vaccinated? My answer to that is absolutely.
Like as a job requirement?
It absolutely should be a job requirement. In fact, I am shocked to think that there are still people working in the healthcare field working with people who are unvaccinated. I just do not understand why we would continue to allow that. I'm going to tell you, if I had children attending school and I knew that the teacher in that classroom was unvaccinated, I would pull my child out and I would be picketing the damn school. Now,
we had the president of the OSSTF on this week. That's public high school teachers, but nevertheless, I mean, the teachers unions always say, "Well, we're doing it for the kids. We're doing it for the kids." But she said she's opposed to mandatory vaccination for her members. She has 60,000 members in the union.
Why?
Privacy. Privacy. You can't ask me. It's a medical privacy. Is what she said.
Privacy. What about the rights of the children not to be taught by somebody that may be a carrier of a deadly disease? For God's sake, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay. I noticed. I want to fit in a few more things here.
Yeah.
A very well known local restaurant tweeted this week. The owner of the restaurant that I follow on Twitter tweeted this week that he can't get staff.
Yeah.
Unless he pays the staff under the table. He says the staff want to be paid under the table. Okay.
Commonplace.
You're hearing stories like that?
Yeah. And not only that, but I mean, no matter where you turn these days, there are signs. Drive down the Carp Road. You're going to see about 4 or 5 signs from various companies along the Carp Road, one road, saying help wanted. Some of them even paying bonuses. Yeah. There is a tremendous shortage of workers, which really begs the question, why are we still handing out all sorts of but taxpayer benefits to people when jobs are going begging? I mean, this is ridiculous. Why are we paying out? What do they get for a CERB? I don't know, $2,000 a month or whatever it is.
Well, it's a little less now. It's about $1,200 a month now.
Why are we doing that when jobs are going begging? I mean, get off your ass, you people, and get out and take a job, for God's sake.
All right, let me ask you this. One final question, because we only have about a minute and a half left here.
Yeah.
As I said, lots of media coverage this week.
My brain this morning. Give me a break.
Come on. This is what we pay you for, okay?
I know.
Reaction to Stephen Harper's appearance on an American podcast.
Yes.
Look, you've met him. You've
guy.
conversed with him. Do you think he'd ever come back? Do you think that the Conservatives would be doing better right now if he was the leader of the party?
Oh, undoubtedly. What's really interesting about Stephen, I like him. I've met him. I've talked with him. He's a bit introverted, no question. What's kind of interesting is I think the public persona, this public perception is rapidly changing about Harper. It's not that long ago when he was sort of considered as kind of mean-spirited and a little stuffy. Yeah. But now I think there's a great deal of nostalgia, including even from some liberals and NDP, longing for the good old days when Harper ran things. We didn't have, $400 billion deficits and so forth. The country was running really well. Everybody that wanted a job had one. So I think the persona, the public image, is really beginning to change. Remember, it's not that long ago where every time Trudeau stood up in the House and there was ever a problem, it was always Harper's problem. Well, I don't think that would work anymore because I think people are beginning to really miss the guy. And would we do better if he was heading the party? Yes, we would, but he's not heading the party. We've got to deal with what we have, folks.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Lowell. I'll talk to you in a few weeks.
You're getting married a week from tomorrow?
Week from tomorrow, yeah.
God bless, okay?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Good luck, my boy. At your age 50, it's bloody well time, I must tell you. I must tell you that. But you know what? You realize that you have left thousands and thousands of young single women very distressed, right?
I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that.
They're in mourning right now.
Oh, sure they are. Yeah, okay. That's it for you, old-timer. We'll talk to you in a few weeks. In the middle of August when the election campaign is probably going to be underway, so that'll be fun. Okay, talk to you later, Lowell Green. Bye-bye. That's the legendary Lowell Green. Bork is back. Pierre Bork from Bork News Watch right after the news on City News.
News. Now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, July 30th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in both Ottawa and Smiths Falls, 14 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. It appears the Canadian economy has rebounded a bit in Q2 this year. Even though there were pandemic measures in place, the economy grew in June by 2.5% year over year. Total economic activity in Canada now just one single percentage point behind pre-pandemic levels. Hogsback Bridge. That is reopened this morning. The bridge had to be closed for an extended period of time, you remember, for reconstruction, then reopened this year only to close on July 23rd for hydraulic issues. The bridge reopened to traffic just moments ago. A return to Major League Baseball in Toronto as the Jays host Kansas City tonight at Rogers Centre. Now, this is the first home game for the past 2 seasons for a team that has been playing out of the United States since the pandemic began. Now, the roof is going to be open if the weather holds tonight, but if it has to be closed, the team says there are additional ventilation measures being taken to keep the 15,000 allowed in safe. A fair warning from both Ottawa Police and the OPP. They're all going to be out in force this long weekend, not only on roads, but on waterways, looking for things like impaired drivers and boaters. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
And 1310 AM.
Bork is back. Pierre Bork from Bork Newswatch. Good morning.
Hello, Rob, and good morning to you. It's always fun to hear you talking with our friend Lowell, who, by the way, as you mentioned, I think is a well-known pigeon farmer, and you can find him from time to time at the Carp Fair. He sells his frozen squab pies, which are quite popular.
Okay. Let me ask you. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to maybe start off with a bit of an anecdote. Do you follow the Bitcoin Pizza on Twitter?
No, I do not. Bitcoin Pizza, no.
I know you like pizzas. You used to live near a pizza shop in Lowertown, as do I. Yeah. And years ago, in 2010, a guy who owned a Papa John's pizza shop decided that he would accept payment for 2 pizzas in Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin that he received was 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizzas. So,
wow, somebody paid him 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizza.
10,000 Bitcoins back in 2010 on May 22nd.
Wow.
So you figure a pizza is $15, so $30 worth of Bitcoin then was 10,000 Bitcoins. Today, that 10,000 Bitcoins is close to $400 million.
Wow. And does the pizza guy still have the Bitcoins?
I don't know.
Imagine if he doesn't. Bitcoin. No.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Because there are stories like that where people have didn't really appreciate, I guess, what would happen with the value of Bitcoin, right? And they can't find their Bitcoin, or they lost their Bitcoin, or you need a PIN to get your Bitcoin and they don't know the PIN, and this kind of stuff, right? So.
Oh yeah, it happens. Look, I talked with a guy. He bought his first Bitcoin at a nickel, and he sold it at 95 cents. He thought he made off like a bandit. Yesterday, I think yesterday or the day before, was at $40,000 US.
Sure, yeah. Yesterday it was, and next week it could be 20,000, right?
It's the ride. It's the ride of a lifetime.
Yeah, it sure is. You know, Bitcoin I get. I as long as I figure, well, Bitcoin's digital gold. That's how I look at it. Digital gold, okay, because it's finite, like gold, right? There's no printing press for gold. It's when they get into blockchain that you lose me. I've tried to understand what blockchain is, but I still, and don't bother explaining it to me, because I've had people explain it to me. Yeah, you've tried to explain it to me, and I still don't get it. So
happy to go into a deep dive some other time, Rob, maybe with a couple of cold beers.
Yeah. So Alberta has basically declared victory over COVID, and look, even if you have it, you don't have to isolate or anything. It's just wide open now. What do you think?
Oh, it's fantastic. Unbelievable. I just hope they don't come to Ontario. And that's the problem, is you don't know who's who over there. And I think the medical people there are shaking their heads in disgust. And
they are.
I don't quite understand it. It seems to be economically motivated. I get that part of it. But the numbers are showing that COVID has not left the province. COVID hasn't, cried uncle. It is not defeated. And I think a bit premature to start reopening everything.
How do you think the battle is going right now against COVID in Canada, Pierre?
I think that it's nice to see the numbers of those who have been vaccinated continuing to go up. I think that's great. Yeah. I think the issue is, are 2 vaccines enough? Are mixtures of vaccines enough? What about the mutations? What impact will they have on those who are vaccinated? How many of those of us who are unvaccinated, and I am fully vaccinated, but how many of those who are unvaccinated are going to be carriers of mutations that the vaccines cannot address?
This stuff with the mixing and matching and not being able to go anywhere internationally, you think they'll get that all sorted out? Or people have booked cruises? There was a story in the paper the other day. People book cruises. They can't go on the cruise ship. People have summer homes in Florida. They can't go to their summer homes because they don't have matching vaccines. Do you think they're going to get that all sorted out, or what?
Well, I think that's a huge issue, and
it's a big issue. Yeah, I mean, if they can't, I mean, you basically grounded millions of Canadians can never leave the country again.
Yeah, the logistics of that are massive. But look, you jump on a cruise ship and you go around the world, you're going to be landing at a lot of destination spots where people are unvaccinated. The bulk of the world, in terms of countries, the percentage of their populations that are vaccinated are small. Very, very small.
Yeah, that's a good point, Pierre. That's a very good point. What else did I want to... Oh, the Olympics. Are you following the Olympics? Are you into it? Are you watching it?
I'm having a tough time. I'm having a tough time, Rob. As a news watcher, I'm concerned about COVID in Tokyo. That's one thing. I've certainly been very interested in some of the dynamics of this current Olympics. You've got the tennis players complaining of extreme heat. You've got others that are worried about mental stress. You've got people that are dropping out. You've got people who are being thrown out because of COVID. It's just a very interesting thing. As far as actually watching the competitions, I've tried 2 or 3 times to watch, and I just can't seem to get into it. I don't quite know why. Maybe the types of things that I like to watch have yet to appear on my screen, but I'm having a tough time with that part of it.
Yeah, I just Googled the weather in Tokyo, where it is now coming up to 10 p.m., I guess. It's 10 p.m. Friday, Tokyo. Right now, 10 p.m., 27 degrees Celsius with 93% humidity at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, and what would the humidex be? Like, my God.
Yeah, well, with the humidity at 93%, right? So
yeah, and if you're competing, it's okay if you're in the pool. That's not a bad place.
Yeah, if you're in the pool, yeah, sure. Yeah.
But if you're competing outside, like, look at the marathon runners. I haven't got a clue what they're going to do. That's just unbelievable.
Actually, yeah. Okay. All right. We're going to play a clip here of Stephen Joseph Harper. Play the clip, please.
Well, it's not a good reaction. It's been overkill. A lot of spending was necessary, but first of all, it's had a different purpose. Remember, the spending back in 08-09 was to, quote, stimulate the economy. We had a free fall of the financial system. Economic activity was freezing or plummeting.
Yep.
This time, the purpose of the spending has been to sustain incomes without stimulating the economy.
So you want to help people?
So people could stop working and not work. And so you have this extraordinary level, and now you have this extraordinary mentality. I think it's extraordinary, where government's just saying, look, this extraordinary economic policy, macroeconomic policy, has saved us from a complete crash during the pandemic, so why can't we just do this forever? Look, this is not all new. I tell people, for those of us now who have the gray hair and remember, this is all the late 60s, 1970s over again, just at a pace that is incredibly faster and going to lead to bad consequences much more quickly.
What are some of the consequences?
Well, the first and obvious one is inflation.
Okay, so that was Harper on an American podcast called The American Optimist, I believe, with Joe Lonsdale. Every time he speaks lately, it seems to make news. maybe not surprising. He's a former prime minister, but he hasn't been around for 6 years. But what do you think about the reaction to him?
Well, it's kind of funny to have him on a show with such a pessimistic message, a show called The Optimist. But that aside, look, there's a guy, he's an economist, right? And it's been said that you can put a bunch of economists in the room, none of them will agree with each other. And as a former prime minister, I'm sure he looks at his successor and can wonder, I could have done better. I would have done this differently. I'm gonna, what is it, Monday quarterback this thing. And that's just natural tendency. What I find of greater concern is that while you want to hear what he has to say because he's a man of proven experience, I think every time he utters something publicly, he overshadows and highlights the weaknesses of his own successor within the party, and that's an issue of greater concern for conservatives, it would seem to me.
Yeah, the host of that podcast, by the way, is he's not a journalist, and he's not. I'm sure he's on the right side of things, but Joe Lonsdale is a very well-known Silicon Valley investor. He co-founded Palantir, that company. Right,
Palantir is big. He's got the former ambassador to the United States, David McNaughton, who's running his Canadian operations.
Yeah. So, 38 years old, co-founded Palantir. So he's done all right, I think, that guy. What else do we have? I have my list here. What do I want to talk about with...
hey, Rob, can I just point out, sure. We talk about Stephen Harper overshadowing Aaron O'Toole.
Yeah.
Look at in our own backyard here, Pierre Poilievre.
Yes.
He's had television ads and...
that was a good ad. Do you have that? David has that. Let's play that again. 30 seconds, right on the nose. More than 300,000 views. It doesn't mean everybody liked it, but it's been seen more than 300,000 times. Go ahead.
Look at those prices for homes, gas, or food. No wonder we're spending more and making less. We had to spend during the pandemic, but Trudeau's plan to borrow forever means inflation and bankruptcy. Instead, let's become the best place for businesses to...
He's energized right there. You can hear it. I'm not watching it as I listen to you right now. I'm hearing it. He's fully energized. And that casts a huge shadow on his own leader, who just doesn't seem to be dynamic, doesn't seem to want the job, is not trying for it. Anyways, those are other issues. But Pierre's got playing the long game here, because I think after this next election, once the Liberals are reelected, the Conservatives will be casting about quickly for a new leader, particularly if it's a minority Liberal government that's returned to office. And then they're going to want to have somebody that can really take them to the promised land.
Okay.
And Pierre's going to stand well in that. Look at the guy's energized. His French is getting a heck of a lot better. He's just an excellent communicator.
Okay. It's interesting that it's his video, right? It doesn't say this message brought to you by the Conservative Party, or vote Conservative, or be with O'Toole, or Team O'Toole, or it's just me, right? Pierre. It's him and him alone.
It is him.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, thank you. Great to hear from you again this week.
I heard that you're going to get married in a week or so. I wish you happy nuptials.
That's right. I am, yes.
To you and your bride, Jennifer, I wish you a fantastic time. Look forward to talking with you when you're back.
Thanks again, Pierre. Yep. We'll be back in the middle of August, just in time for the election campaign. It'll be lots of fun. Pierre Bourque from Bourque Newswatch, 9:45. On the Rob Snow Show, Dr. Vera Etches is coming up next, Ottawa's Chief Medical Officer of Health. This is City News.
I wanted to give gifts to my volunteers, so I started making, I knew this is a skill I had, so I made a chocolate that had culture, a cultural based with a teaching, because culture here is not just a little part, it's the large part, it's the fundamental part of our organization. So then we started doing, just little programs, and we sell a few at a fair. And then we started getting contracts. People were starting to enjoy the chocolates, and started getting more and more contracts all across Canada. Then we decided to become a social enterprise, and we were able to create 2 jobs, and Val is one of our chocolatiers, very talented. We were able to help her with employment.
We started just with a little bit in the kitchen, doing a little bit of chocolate together, and next thing, it's just kind of taken off. And it's great because I love to be creative, and we get to create a lot and make up stuff. And it's just I just love it. It's just great that we get to make money back for Wabano. And it's helping me out, and we're helping just everybody out, Wabano and everything.
We met a very socially conscious business owner, being around town, and we decided to partner because beans and chocolate, coffee and chocolate are sort of created the same way, and there's and they're very one origin bean, so it was a good pairing together, and it's been a fantastic partnership for both of us.
I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Purat, the head of Wabano Fine Chocolates, through a local networking group. And I was completely intrigued by the social enterprise that she was running, and then I looked at what we were doing, trying to support local business and supporting local communities, and it was a perfect match, and it's been fantastic ever since.
We make every batch by hand. We temper it by hand to get to the consistency it needs to be to make a good chocolate. And one of the best, also wonderful things we did, we've connected with Ed, with being around town, and our coffee bars have been an amazing hit. So we're really excited about the connection with our coffee.
Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, so kind of a funny story, and I have a confession to make. Dr. Etches is coming up here, Ottawa's medical officer of health. And this will be the second time this morning that I have interviewed Dr. Etches. I usually, when Dr. Etches comes on the Rob Snow Show here on City News, we have usually already had our conversation. We usually talk around 7 or 7:30 in the morning. And I interviewed Dr. Etches this morning for about 15 minutes at 7:30 this morning. And then I went in and started preparing for the show, and David came in and to the studio and said, Rob, it didn't work. And I said, what do you mean it didn't work? The interview, it didn't record. Something happened and it didn't record. And I said, well, that's not good. That's a pretty big 15-minute hole in our show right there. But anyway, stuff happens. Somebody plugged in a webcam into the computer that we use to record our interviews, and it just, I guess it took over the whole computer and it screwed everything up. But Dr. Etches has been kind enough to join us live on City News this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Well, it's very nice, and I'm sorry to have to go through all this with you again, Dr. Etches.
It bears repeating. I'm happy to help people have the latest.
Yeah,
yes.
Excellent. How would you describe right now the current situation with COVID-19 in Ottawa?
I'm so thankful for what people in Ottawa are doing. We have a really wonderful situation with the level of COVID being stable in the wastewater, and the hospitalizations are almost non-existent. So this is excellent. It takes the immunizing, the people showing up for their first dose and their second dose, and the wearing of the mask, and some of the caution we're taking still around gathering with people, that is making a difference.
Okay. The back-to-school plan is coming out next week from the Ontario government. What would you like to see in the back-to-school plan?
Well, because we're not yet through the pandemic, we still have virus here, and we still have enough of the population, especially children under 12 who aren't vaccinated, aren't protected. I would like to see people start school with masks as a layer of protection. I'd like to see that, of course, it's in-person schooling and that's maintained through the fall for the benefit of children's learning and their families and their mental health and people being able to work. And I think one of the really important things we know is that the vaccination will make a difference. It's going to limit transmission in schools even further than all the measures we're familiar with. But it isn't perfect, and we do, again, have to learn this fall what the impact of the Delta variant being more transmitted as we come inside will mean. So we want time to monitor. And we do really need to, all of us who are involved with sending people into the school environment or working there, we need to maintain that daily screening for symptoms. And actually, this applies to all workplaces. So we want to continue just that daily check-in. Do I have a symptom that could be COVID? Because that is the key to keeping COVID out of school is making sure people don't go when they're sick. And we found there's still room to improve there based on our experience last year. But ultimately, the level's low in the community. It means we can have confidence going into schools.
But nevertheless, it doesn't sound like masks are going anywhere, and I'm going to have to wear this mask for a while. I'm not an anti-masker, you know that. But like most people, I can't wait to get rid of it, right?
Absolutely.
So how much better does it have to get before we can say once and for all goodbye to our masks?
I look forward to that day as well, and it will come. What I want people to understand is there's just so much harm if we go too quickly and we get into exponential growth again. We still have a large population, hundreds of thousands that are not immunized, and that growth of, say, the Delta variant in that population can go exponential still, leading to still some hospitalizations that put too much pressure. We want to avoid those hospitalizations, and we can imagine with masks and vaccination this fall that we can keep that under control. We won't have to go to closures. We won't see people die in the same way. That is really important. That's what we're trying to avoid. And when we see that the vaccination rates continue to climb, we're still able to keep COVID under control, then we'll have that confidence to let the mask measures go. But we see the harm is too great just to imagine that we can somehow proceed without any protections. It isn't the case when we look at the examples around the world. They've returned to mask mandates. We're just not through the pandemic yet. So we're going to get there, eventually when we see that the level of COVID isn't putting pressure on our hospitals, and we'll be able to judge that better in the fall.
What is your advice on how to deal with people who refuse to be vaccinated for whatever reason?
Well, I think, I do know it's a minority of people who in polls many weeks ago and it's being borne out, said, I will never be vaccinated. That's a minority. What we have still between our 83% of people eligible and getting to our target of 90% is, people with questions and people with still barriers to access. And so our efforts are to decrease those barriers to access by using mobile options, inviting workplaces, places of worship, to have us come, and we're getting uptake. People are inviting us. We've got over 50 different workplaces have said, come to our workplace, we'll help you reach some more people, and that's great, but we'll continue that. The questions are legitimate. When people are getting information that contains a lot of myth, they need sometimes some support to sort through, what is known about these vaccines and how they were made and how effective they are.
I want to finally get some comments from you, if I could, about the capacity of the mental health care system. It was strained before anyone had ever even heard of COVID-19. Easier to get access to mental health care if you're privileged enough to have, say, a workplace benefits plan or some coverage that way. but in the public mental health care system, resources are stretched very thin. Given the toll that this has taken on the mental health of so many people, what discussions are ongoing right now among health officials at all levels of government about building up capacity to deal with what will surely be a surge in need for mental health care?
Well, thank you for pointing to this issue. From a public health point of view, we want to prevent people's mental health from reaching the point where health care is needed. So our role is to promote things that keep us well, and of course, returning to more social connections and social activities, physical activity. Those things help us stay well. And then we, as a public health agency, see the need to access services when people are having greater challenge, and we're part of the system that's promoting better points of access. So you can always check Ottawa Public Health's website about mental health services to see how you can access mental health and substance use services. And when we get past those portals, those points of access, it is the case that there are some gaps in service and what's available to people. You know, we see there can be improvements around how people are supported with opioid use, alcohol use. You know, children and youth who are experiencing more eating disorders, these things, definitely there's a need for more resource. So collectively in Ottawa, the hospitals, the community-based mental health and substance use service providers, we're looking at the priorities, and we are making the case of what's needed in Ottawa to the provincial government that funds health care systems. But we also know there isn't a lot more money. We need to work as effectively as we can in coordination so that collectively, the services are there that people need. And I do encourage people, sometimes there's a gap in knowing that there are things people can access. And so to use that website as a resource, and we'll keep working to improve services with all our partners.
Thank you again, Dr. Etches.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Bye-bye. Dr. Vera Etches, Ottawa's Chief Medical Officer of Health. The Talkback Hour is coming up next. It's the Friday free-for-all, so I'm just turning the show over to you. Ladies and gentlemen, you pick the topics. I don't pick the topics. I'd love to hear from you Friday before the August long weekend. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, July 30th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 14 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Canada's women's 8 rowing crew raced to gold at the Tokyo Olympics, Canada's third gold of the Games, and team member Christine Roper of London says the crew can now celebrate.
My teammates and I have worked for a really long time towards a very clear goal, and we achieved it. And right now we just get to celebrate it and be really proud of ourselves.
Now also at the Games, a women's soccer team from Canada advancing past Brazil to the medal round. There were disappointments, though, like Melissa Bishop from Eganville, failing to qualify for the semis in 800 meters, finishing 4th in her heat. Both Penny Alexiak and Rosie McClellan missed out on medals with 4th place finishes in swimming and in trampoline. No golden slam for the world's top male tennis player, Jim Ryan telling us Novak Djokovic failed to become the first man to win all 4 Grand Slam tournaments and Olympic gold in the same year.
Novak Djokovic, competing for his native Serbia, has been knocked out of the men's singles competition here by 4th seed Alexander Zverev of Germany. Djokovic will compete for bronze tomorrow. He'll also compete later in mixed doubles.
Now, Steffi Graf in 1988 remains the only tennis player ever to achieve what is referred to as the Golden Slam. Japan has expanded a COVID-19 state of emergency to 4 more areas in addition to Tokyo. It follows record spikes in infection as the capital hosts the Olympic Games. James Longman telling us Olympic officials insist the surge is unrelated to what's happening in Tokyo.
They've described the bubble as the most tested community almost anywhere on Earth. And they say there's not been one single case of someone transferring COVID from the bubble into Tokyo. And I suppose with fewer than 200 cases inside the bubble, that's on something like 15,000 athletes, many more volunteers. They're doing a pretty good job so far, but there is a long way to go here.
Emergency measures already in place in Tokyo extended until the end of August now after the Olympics and well into the Paralympics, which don't start until August 24th. City News time 10:03, and now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
May see a few scattered showers this morning in Ottawa and then mostly to partly cloudy conditions today. Highs only 19. Clear breaks into the overnight and a cool low near 11 degrees. Sun and cloud for Saturday. Chance of showers. Highs near 21. The daytime high today 19.
And right now, 14 degrees in both Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. The U.S. military is warning of what analysts have described as a major expansion of China's nuclear missile silo field. More from reporter Charles de Ledesma.
The warning comes at a time of heightened tensions between the U.S. and China, whose bilateral relationship has taken a dive after a trade war and which has continued to deteriorate since the beginning of the global pandemic. Elsewhere, senior officials from the U.S. and Russia have met this week in Geneva on arms control talks, whose ultimate aim is to reduce the risk of nuclear war.
Now, researchers at the Federation of American Scientists estimate that China has about 250 underground missile silos that are right now under construction. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
And it's the Friday free-for-all. Our favorite hour of the week around here. We don't come up with the topics. You come up with the topics. Just kind of roll with it. Usually we talk about things that are in the news. It's not any kind of hard and fast rule. It doesn't have to be in the news. Maybe it's something you think should be in the news. It doesn't really matter what it is. Within reason, we're usually good to go with whatever happens to be on your mind. So this hour is your hour. You know me. I could talk for the whole hour. I will try not to do that. You know what? I don't want to talk at all. I've been talking all week, 2 hours away from summer holidays. I'm just praying that the weather smartens up. At my place up near Gracefield, it's 11 and feels like +8 right now. July 30th. I am going to have to put the wood stove on. I'm not going swimming in the lake. I'm going to go home, put on some long johns, and put on the wood stove. Barry, good morning. Barry, you're on City News.
Good morning, Rob. Well, I wish you luck with your holidays. I think there's a heat wave out west, which is coming our way. So,
okay, all right.
And hopefully for you, you'll be all right. You'll come back all nice and burnt and suntanned.
There you go. Thank you, Barry. So what's on your mind this morning, Barry?
Well, this bozo on Parliament Hill and the farce that has come up with the immigration of all the translators and people that helped out our...
Oh, the Afghan interpreters. Yeah, well, they've...
The people that helped out our forces, the people that...
Absolutely, yeah.
Ran the little restaurants and helped them eat.
Drivers, people driving our people around there for years, right?
All of them that helped our forces.
All of them, yeah.
And I wonder, Rob, if Trudeau would have said anything or done anything if a few of our veterans of Afghanistan hadn't spoken out. And I think that after they spoke out, he just used it as a photo op, and that's all that mattered to him.
Well, I think that, the big twist in that story this week was they said, yes, we're going to resettle them. Yes, you're right. We need to resettle these individuals. They have 3 days to apply.
Yeah, well, that's what bothers me the most is the
3 days to apply. Like, are you kidding?
They're under death threat. Now that they've made it news, the Taliban are probably more aware of it and going after them quicker now that they made it, announced it all on the news and everything too. But the veteran that came on the TV, that was the only way they could see that the government would do anything about it, is if they themselves got on TV and made the government look bad or embarrassed them a little bit. And sure enough, Trudeau got in there for the photo op, and then a couple of days later, the bureaucracy is telling them, "Oh, well, you're going to apply online."
We'll see this time if Mr. Trudeau. Thank you, Barry. We'll see if Mr. Trudeau shows up at the airport carrying a teddy bear this time. Okay. On that one. 750-1310 is our call-in line. It's the Friday free-for-all talkback hour on the Rob Snow Show. Mark in Ottawa, you're on City News. Mark.
Hi there. I'd like to talk about the Wuhan Games, in World Military Games in Wuhan, China.
Okay, not familiar.
Okay, so that was in 2019, and what happened there was 140 nations and 9,400 athletes. That's quite a few.
Yeah.
That's not even including support staff. And this was in Wuhan in October of 2019. They figure this was the first mega spreader.
Like a super spreader event kind of thing.
The very first one.
Okay.
And it just boggles my mind that, the government's saying, we did everything and we looked into every aspect and we've been on top of everything with this virus. And they knew about this. They knew about this because they had all kinds of people there. It boggles your mind.
Well, very clearly in the earliest of days, if you think about the first, say, 3 months of 2020, right?
Okay.
They were slow off the mark, right? Wouldn't you agree?
I'd agree with that. And
you had people seriously. You had people like Dr. Tam and the health minister Patty Hajdu saying the risk to Canada is low. The risk to Canada is low. Closing borders really wouldn't do very much. These sorts of things, right? And the idea of even preventing or limiting travel from China to even suggest such a thing was viewed as what? Promoting racism or something like xenophobia, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That was the mindset of government officials and health officials in the earliest days of 2020. And it's there. The record speaks for itself, sir. The record speaks for itself. So.
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. We're flying through them here today. A couple of phone lines available there. Chris in Blackburn Hamlet. Good morning, Chris. You're on City News.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi, Chris.
Harkening back to your conversation with Lowell Green, so Lowell said that 99.7 or something, 99.7% of the cases are unvaccinated people. So doesn't that lend fuel to the argument of the unvaccinated that those who are vaccinated can kind of rest assured and relax because the stats prove that they are not.
It's about what it's going to do to the healthcare system as well, though, sir. Right? It's what will it do to the healthcare system again? Because there are still a lot of people who aren't vaccinated.
Yeah.
Right.
But the numbers of our hospital situation is pretty good, as Dr. Etch has just said. So there's not very many people, at least here in Ottawa, very few people in.
I mean, if you have, whatever the number is in Canada now, I don't have the latest numbers. Fully vaccinated, David can look them up. The percentage, David, of the population that is fully vaccinated in Canada now, what is it? 70%? Is it 70%? 60%? But you say 30% of the population is not fully vaccinated. I mean, you're talking about what? 10 million people, something like that, right? I mean, a lot of those people would be young children under the age of 12 who, can't get vaccinated now, but you'd still be talking about millions of people.
Right.
At risk with a Delta variant here that is highly contagious, right? And does result, if you're not vaccinated, in hospitalization and death. So.
Yeah. You had a guest on Wednesday, I don't remember her name, a medical official. And when it came, one of the things that I was hoping you two would discuss was the issue of, approvals, but the drug is not FDA approved. But when you asked her about that, she said, yeah, but it's approved in Canada.
Well, she said the approval process in Canada is different than the United States. This whole interim label does apply in the United States, but it doesn't apply in Canada, that it is approved in Canada is what she said.
How can a vaccine that's manufactured in the USA, if they are not approving it there, how can Health Canada approve it here?
Well, they applied, and Health Canada approved it.
So they have different standards in two different countries?
Yes.
That's weird.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyways, the other two topics.
That was Dr. Dawn Bodish. She does know. She's a Canada research chair. Right. Chris went to Oxford. Okay. Pretty smart. Okay. PhD from Oxford, right? So
strange to me, but talking about the job vacancies, this is one of the reasons, and you and I have talked about this before, why I am against raising the minimum wage too high. Because what happens is you get people who don't want to work if it pays, to stay home, or even with minimum wages. A buddy of mine works at the Metro store just down the street from me, and he has a very low-skilled job. Not to put him down or anything, but he packs the groceries and stuff and does sweeping and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And he was on vacation, and he said the guy that replaced him didn't do a very good job, and the supervisor was complaining about how his replacement did a poor job. And it's like, well, this is what happens when you try to give people high minimum wages. They just can do it half-baked and still get away with it.
Okay, I don't know about that. But, Chris, thank you for your call this morning, sir. Oh, let's take one more. And then we'll clear the phone lines, we'll clear the decks, and we'll start brand new in the next segment. Kevin in Canada.
Yeah, how you doing there, Rob?
I'm good, Kevin. Thank you.
That's good.
What's up?
Listen, I wanted to ask you something. You might want to school me. You've done that a few times.
What's that, sir? I'm sorry?
Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I don't believe these butchers at the residential schools. I don't think anything is beyond what they might do. But in all those graves that they found, don't you think it would have been prudent to have exhumed a couple of the bodies and find out, maybe there was a cholera outbreak or something, and then they had no other choice?
Well, maybe that's the next step, sir. Maybe that's the next step.
Done that already.
Well, maybe maybe some of them did die of cholera. Sure, absolutely.
Well, yeah. If there was like back then, if it was in
but let's say you exhumed a couple of the bodies and you found that one of them died of cholera. Can you say all of them died of cholera?
No, but I would certainly like to know. Like I say, I'm not trying to exonerate the schools. I think there's a bunch of fruitcakes. But it just I find it weird why they wouldn't.
It's just the whole policy is just totally misguided, sir. The whole policy just wrong, misguided, tragic, and now I think they're doing a serious deep dive into whether it was criminal.
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, it could very well have been. But if they find one with cholera and they take another one out, they find it's got cholera, and they take another one out and they find it's got cholera, maybe that's what it was. And maybe they had no choice.
Yeah, but it doesn't, okay, and maybe that's the case. It still doesn't justify the original intent of the policy, which was to remove the student from their family, from their home, from their culture. To get the Indian out of the child, sir.
No,
and let's not lose sight of the original policy.
I agree with you.
Whether they died of a beating or they died of cholera, they shouldn't have been in those schools in the first place.
And I agree 100%.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. I got to go. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Rob Snow Show, City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporated the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
(750-1310).
And it's the Friday free-for-all. We can revisit some of the topics that we've talked about already this week. We can get into brand new topics. Just about anything goes. All the things going on, everything that's happening all over the world, right here in our city. It's interesting. There was so much interest in the story about the pickup trucks this week. I really got a kick out of that, sparked by a pair of columns that have been in the media recently. I see some people are giving Marcus Guy over the Globe and Mail all the credit for kind of igniting that discussion because he wrote about the so-called plague of the pickup truck, the plague of the pickup truck. But in fact, that wasn't the first column in the news media about that and along those lines. There was a column from I think it's a rather new outlet called Passage, The Passage. You ever hear of that before, David? No? I had never heard of it, but I came across it in my Google News feed for some reason. And the writer was David Mastracci, and he made the case that the sale of pickup trucks should be banned. They're so bad they should be banned. And that the only people who should be allowed to buy pickup trucks are people who can prove that they need them for work. So you imagine you go to Service Ontario to register your vehicle, and it's, well, Mr. Snow, you're a radio broadcaster. Do you really need a pickup truck? Denied. If you don't need one for work, you shouldn't be allowed to buy one. I don't know, all kinds of crazy to me, and it was for a lot of my listeners, but it certainly generated a lot of discussion, provoked a lot of reaction. And hey, when you're a columnist, that's what your job is. You're supposed to be provocative. You want to get back into that, we can get back into that today. If you don't, we can get into anything today. Alec, Ottawa. Good morning, Alec.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, sir. Thank you.
Well, I'm, a topic that's been beaten to death, but here's something that I'm starting to wonder with COVID and the vaccine and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So people that are willingly not taking the vaccine, at one point do we start talking about, hey, you don't want to be part of the solution, right?
Yeah.
So, in the beginning, we didn't know what the outcome was. Nobody knew. People shut down, all that. But do you still get the same benefits if you're willfully not taking
Well, what
the
do you
vaccine?
think? What do you think, Alec? This is a question that I've been asking. Should there be consequences if you're not vaccinated? Or should an unvaccinated person get to fully participate in society the way you and me get to participate in society, Alec? And we're fully vaccinated. I won't speak on your behalf. I'm fully vaccinated. Are you fully vaccinated?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
And,
so it's a great question. It's a great question. Yeah.
We all knew that taking the vaccine had a risk. A small amount.
Small
but
risk,
still a
yeah.
risk.
Yeah.
But we all decided, you and I at this point, as I found out, we both decided that the risk was worth the reward. But those people that don't want to participate and, decide, hey, I'm not taking it and I don't care, I don't know. I think that there should be some consequences and some limitations to what they can do as the greater.
Well, it's starting already. Their job opportunities may be limited. Certainly the sorts of commercial activities they can participate in, whether it's going into various shops or going to restaurants, whatever the case might be limited. So it's already begun, sir. Consequences for the unvaccinated.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, thank you, Alec. Yeah, good call, sir.
Thank you,
yeah,
sir.
Excellent point that you raise. Very important point that you raise. Something that's not going away at all. In fact, let me give you a sample of some of the headlines today, just on that. Things like mandatory vaccines, David, that was a hot topic this week, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Controversial.
CTV News has a story this morning. More calls for mandatory immunizations for healthcare workers after Dr. Bonnie Henry says she has, quote, little patience for the unvaccinated. That's one of the headlines. BC not ruling out mandatory COVID-19 vaccines for long-term care workers. Why mandatory COVID vaccines for healthcare workers could help Canada fight a fourth wave. That's a CBC story. University Health Network. That's one of the big Toronto hospital networks. Like the Ottawa Hospital, all kinds of campuses. University Health Network. To implement mandatory COVID-19 home testing for unvaccinated staff. Toronto Star has that story. Okay, you don't want to be vaccinated? If you work at the University of Health Network, you will have to take a test, home test, every so often. Pentagon says it will start talks on making COVID-19 vaccine mandatory in the United States, according to The Hill, the American publication, The Hill. So, it's that, to the caller's point, that issue has not subsided at all. On the Queensway, Stephen. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Rob. This is the best show on radio.
Oh, you're so kind, sir. Thank you so much
I'm
for
just
saying
being
that.
honest.
Thank you
I
so
liked
much.
101.1 when it was country, but this show and this station outdoes the country station.
Oh,
And I listen to this all the time now.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Very kind of you to say. Yeah.
I'm just being honest and saying the facts now.
So what's on your mind, sir? What's on your mind?
I wanted to touch base on minimum wage.
Yeah.
15 years ago, I was a business grad, and the thing that they teach you is increasing minimum wage is bad. It causes inflation. It makes things more expensive. And I did some digging a couple of years ago, and I found that under the mentality, minimum wage increasing, it's bad. We don't want to do that. But in the 70s, it was around $10 an hour. So if you use just general inflation, we'd get about $25 an hour. Why was it reduced? I'm not sure. I don't have that answer, but it was reduced. And now, we're sitting in Ontario at least around $14 an hour, which is way below poverty, especially with the rents in Ottawa. And I think that when we have the full picture, we need to really support increasing minimum wage and get it where it needs to be. Countries like Australia are about $22 an hour.
Really?
We're way behind. We need to get on the ball.
You think so?
I think so. And I also wanted to touch base on the vaccine, the anti-vaxxers that think that microchips and that you're going to be tracked. I'm fully vaccinated, and it's ludicrous to think that these things are legitimate and true. And if you don't want to be tracked, you better get off the grid, because every single cell phone can be tracked at any time. So people that are believing in these ideologies that are just irrational and illogical, I don't understand how they can do so. And if I have time for one more thing, I have been a long-time conservative voter and supporter.
Yes.
Recently, I have decided I'm going to vote for Trudeau in the next election.
Oh, my gosh, sir. What has happened to you? What has happened to you? Have you been hanging out at the farm and getting kicked in the head by horses, sir? What's going on?
I know it sounds insane, but, I was a Scheer supporter. He got more votes than Trudeau did in the last election.
Conservative Party did, yes. Yeah.
And, Scheer, he was a great leader. I called that he was shy right away. I did work. I have a cleaning company, Clean Freaks in Ottawa, and I did work for a gentleman who was the Auditor General. I believe it was the PM, and essentially I had this chat with him, and he says, come to know and think about it. He says, I know Scheer, and he says, yeah, Scheer was a shy guy, and unfortunately the Conservative Party gave him a strong nudge to step down after that last election, and they got O'Toole in place. And, O'Toole to me is so irrelevant that I don't really follow what he does or says, but
well, I mean, look, we have to wrap it up here because we're running a little bit behind. It's tough. It's tough for the opposition leaders right now, all across the political spectrum right now. Stephen, I thank you for your call, and I thank you for your kind words. I mean, this is basically the news cycle now. COVID. Here's Justin Trudeau. COVID. Here's Justin Trudeau. The Olympics. COVID. The Olympics. COVID. Here's Justin Trudeau. I mean, if you're Aaron O'Toole, what kind of chance do you have? The news is coming up. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
1310 AM.
It's Friday, July 30th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 15 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 14. And here's what's making news this hour. It is the second straight day of COVID numbers in Ontario over 200. The province reporting 229 more cases and 11 more deaths from COVID-19. There are 9 additional cases in Ottawa, 2 more in Renfrew, 1 more in Eastern Ontario's health unit. However, an adjustment of the figures shows 1 less case in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. Almost 21,000 tests were completed for these numbers. Ottawa's top doctor says several agencies are banding together combating mental health issues since this pandemic began. Dr. Vera Etches says while money is stretched very thin, there is going to be a need for mental health services in light of COVID-19 and an anticipated surge in patients. Ottawa Police, along with OPP, RCMP, Military Police, and Mad Canada, all combining to keep roads safe this long weekend. There are going to be ride checkpoints set up throughout the city's streets and also the province, also on the waterways as well, to make sure everyone is following the road and water rules. After being closed since last Friday, the Hogsback Bridge reopened this morning. The bridge had to be closed for an extended period of time for reconstruction, but after it reopened, it had to close again. That was due to a hydraulic issue. The bridge reopened this morning just after 9 o'clock. City News Time at 10:33. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
I just noticed that it's Mayor Watson's birthday, David. Did you see that on Twitter? I just saw that on Twitter.
I did see that. Yeah. Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to the mayor. 60 years old. The mayor is 60. My gosh, did they not have a mandatory retirement age for mayors?
Should they?
Well, they didn't have one for Hazel McCallion, so I guess they won't have one for Jim Watson.
Don't tell Bob Shirelli.
That means Jim Watson is almost exactly 10 years older than me. I turned 50 2 weeks ago, something like that, and he is turning 60 today. So, look, Your Worship, happy birthday. Okay, happy birthday. And many more, and many more. Are you running for mayor? Are you running again? Arthur in Kingston. Good morning, Arthur. You're on City News.
Good morning. I listen to your show every morning while I'm on my coffee, Rob.
I appreciate that, Arthur. Very kind of you. Yeah.
I just want to share a story about Petro-Canada on June 19th of last week. July.
July 19th, okay.
I filled my truck up at Petro-Canada, and I've been a long-time member of the PetroPoints Canada thing. So I fill my truck up, and I go in to redeem my points, and they won't let me redeem my points.
Why not?
So, so I was a little upset because I'm on a fixed income, and I'm a little mad and upset. I've tried to call different or news stations to try to get my story out. Nobody wants to seem to listen, and I thank you very much.
Okay.
So I spent 3.5 hours on hold trying to get through. So they come out and tell me I couldn't redeem my points due to the fact that I don't have an email address or the internet. Well, because I'm on a fixed income,
you've decided you can't afford that expense. So.
That either puts food on my table or fuel on my truck so I can get food.
Right. Okay.
So to make a long story short, they end up closing my account down. I just feel that if a corporation or a company is going to offer a point system to the people of Canada, that everybody should be entitled to it, whether you have the internet or not. And I appreciate you having this show that I can voice my opinion.
Well, it sounds fair to me, sir. It only sounds fair to me. I don't see... You have a phone number, you have a mailing address. Why would they, why do they want your email address? Even if you had the internet, why is your email address any of their darn business anyway?
Exactly, Rob. I even went back. It has nothing to do with the store owner. I even went back to him that day to discuss and tell him my personal feelings about it.
Right.
And he said that same day he had to decline 3 or 4 other customers that were wanting to use their points.
Really?
So
It must be a new thing. It must be a new thing, then. New policy.
There's not even a sign on the doors or advertising on the radio saying, as of, let's say, July 1st of 21, you got to have an email address to redeem your points.
Now, how long would you say you had been a member of Petro
I've
Points?
been supporting Petro-Canada for over 15 years, Rob.
Oh, okay. All right.
And you know what? I can't be the only one out there this has happened to, and I'm trying to stick up for the small people out there. But I feel like that I've been discriminated against because I'm on I'm on a fixed income, Rob, and you said it. I use that money to put food on my table.
All right.
It's
Arthur,
not right.
I'm glad you raised that issue, Arthur. It's
I've called Scott Reed and
the MP, Scott Reed. Okay, all right.
You know what? And nobody's. I got to give Randy Hillier some credit. He called me. He called me back.
Okay.
But he said this is a provincial matter.
Well, he is a provincial. A federal matter,
he said.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, sure. Okay, Arthur. All right.
I appreciate you listening to my story.
Well, I appreciate you telling it, sir. I appreciate your kind words, and I wish you all the best with that. And if anybody is in a similar circumstance, by all means. Sounds strange to me. Rockville, Mike. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Rob. How are you doing?
Good, sir. Thank you.
I'm a new listener, first-time caller.
New listener and a first-time caller. I love it. Good stuff.
I'm recovering from CBC, too.
Okay. All right. Okay. How are things in beautiful Brockville today?
Today is pretty good. A little windy, but very nice outside.
It's a lovely town, Brockville. Love Brockville. Yeah. Go ahead. Okay.
So, government debt.
Yes.
In my opinion, it's about the same now as it was before COVID.
In your opinion? Okay. That's an odd opinion to have.
No money was borrowed. It was simply printed.
Printed. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Nobody is paying anybody back for that. The damage is now. Anybody sitting on cash is sitting on cash that's been devalued.
Mm-hmm.
Any assets you have are devalued, and anything you want to buy is going to cost 2 or 3.
Well, I don't know. The Canadian dollar's at 80 cents U.S., sir. How do you explain that? It's not down to 63 cents U.S. We're not talking about the Canadian peso. Certainly somebody's house has not been devalued, has it?
They printed...
I don't know what homes they're going for in Brockville, but they're going for $700,000 in Ottawa.
Well, it's harder to buy them, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot harder to buy them, yeah.
So that goes to my point.
Right.
The U.S. printed more money than we did. So it's kind of equal.
Right. Yeah, I understand this, but usually when I hear this line and it kind of takes over market sentiment, for example, if we want to get into this, if the currency is being debased or being devalued or whatever the case might be because of all the money printing that's gone on, the debauchery with the currency, then why isn't the price of gold rallying? Why can't Bitcoin manage to go through, say, $40,000 or something? Why aren't bond yields rising, for example? All of these kind of things that you would think would kind of be the natural counter reaction to all of this money printing. Why isn't all of that stuff happening?
I don't have an answer for that.
All right. Okay, Mike. Okay. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I mean, sure. There certainly has been. He says a lot of debt has not been created. Well, I would say a lot of debt has been created, and the debt is probably around $1.3 trillion right now, and the annual deficit is $350 billion. I really don't see eye to eye with the caller on that. But it's kind of obscure for our purposes. Mary in Ottawa. Mary, you're on City News. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, Mary. Thank you.
Good. I'm a first-time caller.
Holy cow, a lot of first-time callers today. Thank you.
I've been listening to you for a couple of weeks. I hope you had a good birthday.
I did. Yes, I did.
Good.
Yes, I did.
Good, good. And vacation next week, which is always nice.
Yes, it is. A couple of weeks, yeah.
Oh, good. Are you taking a couple of weeks off?
I am taking 2 weeks off. I will be back Monday, August 16th, and on August 7th, I'm getting married.
Congratulations.
Yes,
Congratulations. I am. I've been married for 15 years.
Okay, good for you, Mary. Good for you.
So I know that, COVID is a dead horse that's been beaten with that stick.
Yes, it has, yeah.
It's It's all that you ever talk about and all that we ever hear about, and vaccines and passports and governments and all that other stuff. And I have to say, I don't have faith in this vaccine.
You don't have faith in it? Okay.
No. And I mean...
Why not?
I know that Pfizer is a company that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And Moderna is a fairly new company. They've been around for about 12 years.
Yeah. They'd never, before the vaccine, I will say this, before the vaccine, Moderna had never had a single pharmaceutical product ever approved by the FDA.
Exactly, and that's my point, that in the 12 years that they've existed, they've been trying for years to get an mRNA vaccination approved by the FDA, and they've never been able to do so. And that's something that a lot of people don't know. I did some research because I want to make an informed decision, because right now I don't have faith in this vaccine. I'm not vaccinated. My family, well, my household is not vaccinated.
Wow.
And I mean, I wear my masks. I don't go out if I'm feeling unwell. I've gotten tested, you know, and I do my global responsibility that way. But I cannot put faith in something that, you know, that the government doesn't.
Well, what would give you confidence, then? What would give you confidence to get vaccinated?
I don't think I could until maybe 20 years from now, when we know the long-term effects. Because look at it. I'm a 40-year-old female. You don't know that, but I'm a 40-year-old female. And I look at all the people that are having issues that correlate with the vaccination, that, you know, heart inflammation and lung issues.
Well, I mean, you say a lot of people, but it's not really a lot of people when you take in percentage terms the number of people who've actually had the vaccine. I think I heard on the news this morning, it's like 4 billion doses of the vaccine have been given out.
Well, look what happened in India. Wasn't it like 40,000 people that had the first dose?
Yeah, well, and what's the population of India, Mary? But what's the population of India?
I guess,
right?
You know,
more than 1 billion people live in India.
True, and they realized that...
Like if you had 1 billion cars going through, say, a four-way stop, you'd probably have 40,000 accidents. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Either way.
Is the risk any greater?
Is the risk greater? I think that, you know, one thing that a lot of people are afraid of is death.
Sure, people are afraid of death, but, you know, particularly with, you know, let's take a 40-year-old woman, Mary. I've had, I mean, like some of the best scientists in the world on this program, trained at the best universities in the world, okay? Harvard, Yale, Oxford, all the big ones. When there were all those concerns about health effects for women, that they could have the blood clot, right? The risk of the blood, having a blood clot was something like 1 in a million, something like that, 1 in a million, when it's 1 in 1,000 if you're on the birth control pill. You're more likely to have a blood clot if you're on birth control. Much more likely than if you had the vaccine.
Okay, and well, let's talk about something else right there. So there's thalidomide.
Thalidomide, sure, yeah, I'm very familiar with it. Yeah, know people who suffered from the after effects of thalidomide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
60 years later, they're like, oh, sorry, you know, we were trying to help you during your pregnancy, and now your kids and your kids' kids are all going to have
Mary, I understand what you're saying, and I know where that fear comes from, and a lot of the regulatory regime that is in place now because of the tragedy of thalidomide and the investigation and the research that didn't happen when thalidomide was being prescribed to pregnant mothers to help with their nausea. Thank you, Mary, for your call. I hope you'll call again sometime. 10:45, Rob Snow Show. This is City News.
At Spence Diamonds, we're...
Well, we all loved our rock T-shirts growing up, right? It was our badge to say, hey, we went to this concert. We knew that band inside out. So we kept doing that and kept promoting that. What's sort of happening now is that audience is dying. I always say the earth is flat. So the 60s rockers are falling off the end of the earth. So you don't see as big a sales anymore because my audience is disappearing. What's sort of helping to promote that history is the kids are buying vinyl. And luckily we have a vinyl shop in the neighborhood here, record center. So what's happening is I've seen kids come in with their dad. And the dad saying, hey, do you have any Beatles shirts? Do you have any CBGB? Do you have any of this? I said, well, why? He said, well, because my daughter's into it. She's wearing my T-shirt. So slowly it's coming back, right? The kids are, I think, getting fed up with the generic music that's out there. And they want to click into something that, first of all, links them to their parents, something that they thoroughly enjoy now, and maybe they're passing it on to their grandkids. Pandemic has been a couple of things, definitely hard on everybody. So much messaging that's out there that people don't understand, stats every day. Jesus Murphy, like I'm getting a headache just reading this stuff, right? So really it was just trying to understand where we were going to go from there. The city of Ottawa all of a sudden said, everybody's got to wear a mask. You got to wear it on the bus. People were scrambling, okay? And I had, the store next door had really big windows, so I just flooded the window with masks. Well, that was the activity that saved the business. People were coming in buying 2, 3, 4 masks at a time at $20 a pop here. But my masks were so different. They were the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Queen, all the pop culture. Everything else out there was medical masks. And right, so people said, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to show my rock and roll. So it became the new T-shirt as far as I'm concerned. Well, what I've done, I'm Hintonburg. I'm now at 1114A Wellington Street, which is next door to the Fab Gear store. And the reason I've changed names, I've rebranded the store, is because I was planning on retiring. And in December, I went, oh, I'm not going to retire. But I've committed to changing what the store's about. So I came up with a new name, Fab Gear's Rock Shop, where legends are dressed, and essentially get that message out. I prefer, if the shirt don't fit, you come in, you try another one on. People like to feel the fabrics with clothing. It's amazing. You'll come in and go, oh, I love that. Oh, can I try this? So that's the big difference. I'm not out to make a gazillion dollars. I stick the way I am, old school. I take cash, we take cards. Come on in and talk to the owner.
Final segment for phone calls. Last chance to talk to me for a couple of weeks. Like I said, I'll be back on the 16th. Derek Fage filling in for me again for the next 2 weeks. He was great when I was away, from what I hear. I didn't listen, David. Honestly, I try to tune out all the media. I get rid of the Twitter on my phone and get,
blackout.
Unplug.
Yeah,
unplug,
blackout.
Right?
There you go.
Get away from it.
No, yeah, Derek's great.
Yeah, but Derek's great, though. Yeah. He's a natural. He's a natural. I only heard good things. So he'll be filling in for me, Derek Fage from Rogers Television, for the next 2 weeks. Paul in Ottawa, you're on City News. Paul.
Well, first off, congratulations on your marriage coming up.
Thank you.
Yeah, and enjoy your vacation.
I will.
I want to pick your brain.
My brain, okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's a COVID question.
That's okay.
We've had about a little over 26,000 people killed by COVID in this country, at least according to our world of data on the internet.
Yep.
When the Americans had 3,000 killed in 9/11, everyone instantly knew who Osama bin Laden was. Not too many people knew before, but after, he became literally a household name.
Sure, yeah.
This virus, this COVID virus, has been, pretty solidly linked to China and the missteps by the Chinese government.
Cover up, yeah.
Yeah. But just over this pandemic, I have not seen much of a focus, especially in Canadian media, on holding China to account. And I'm like, my God, they just killed more than 10 times, about just under 9 times the amount of people that died in 9/11 Canadians. Right. Why, what I want to know from you is, why hasn't there been more of a focus on their role in it, holding them to account?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, sir. I wish I could give you an answer to that, but I don't know the answer to that. I can't explain the motives of other people or other news organizations.
You have no opinion why you think it might be?
Well, you didn't ask me for my opinion. You wanted to know why, right? You wanted an answer, right?
Well, why do you think it is?
Why do I think that they're not holding China to account. Well, what would we do to hold China to account, Paul? What would you suggest?
Let me give you an example.
All right.
When holding it to account, there's different levels of that. But when I read what's happening in China and countries that are trying to sort of hold them to account, it's not Canada.
It's not Canada. No.
When I read Canadian media, I don't see much about the criticism about the Chinese government on it.
Well, I don't know. What media are you reading?
But when I read,
for example, if you read lately, a lot of the reporting from, I would say, the stories from Bob Fife and Steve Chase, they've done a lot of deep dives into China, the Canada-China file, Canada-China politics. Terry Glavin in the National Post,
longtime critic of the Chinese government,
eviscerates the Chinese regime on a regular basis. So.
I find those very much the exception to the rule.
Well, and maybe.
What I have found over the pandemic is that when I'm getting my sources, like when I'm reading about, Chinese government role in the pandemic, whatever it may be, more like almost exclusively, I'm reading non-Canadian sources, whether it's BBC, Associated Press, whatever it may be.
Okay.
And I don't know, I might just be, seeing something that's not there, but I'm just literally curious, why haven't we been more focused on them here? Because, like I said, it's 26,000 deaths. Canadians died more.
Yeah.
And you figure it'd be taken up. If you listen to the CBC, they're reporting on important things, Indigenous issues, or, equal right issues, as they should be reported on.
Sure.
But completely absent or not in proper proportion is any reporting on the Chinese government's role in this pandemic.
Well, and the pandemic and a half a dozen other things, if not a dozen other things, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But, another pandemic.
The two Michaels, Huawei, 5G, theft of intellectual property, no respect for copyright, no human rights, railroaded Hong Kong. Are they about to invade Taiwan? I mean, persecution of the Falun Gong. I mean, how you could go on and on, Paul. But I got to go. Sorry, we're tight on time. We only got a few minutes left. Thank you for your best wishes, Rodney. Go ahead, Rodney.
Hey. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Hey, and congratulations.
Thank you again, sir.
2 weeks off and getting married.
2 weeks off and getting hitched, yeah.
And just the envy of everybody that's not married that doesn't have 2 weeks off. Just, Hey, and then on the laughing side of things, you're not bringing David along? Or is he too big to make the perfect ring boy?
I'm getting married at my place up near Gracefield. Only so many people will fit on the dock, and I'm already afraid because some of the people who are going to be there are kind of large as it is, including me. And David might be just enough to sink us all. So,
just check with your insurance before the ceremony goes on. What's your water coverage?
What's the waterfront coverage?
Docket,
exactly.
Hey, and then I just wanted to finish off talking with you about two different traffic things. One's going to be a few weeks ago, and I got to sort of mention a different analogy, and it was about vaccinations, and you were racing down Bronson Avenue, and we talked about, here comes a red light. Eventually you're going to have an accident when you go through it.
Yeah.
Here's a different analogy. If you're vaccinated, not vaccinated, do you have COVID? You don't have COVID? Well, you run the red light, you make it through, but you cause an accident. Somebody else maybe swerves and has an accident. So that's just going to be, the same analogy. If you're vaccinated, not vaccinated, you don't know if you have COVID, share safety.
You might be okay, but what about someone you pass it on to, in other words? You're going to cause them to have an accident, you're saying, right? Maybe that's the person that ends up in the hospital.
And
okay,
then the other thing on the police budget, somebody else, a few callers after me, commented part of what I wanted to say, and that was all the guns and drugs and all the people getting shot. There's actually more people in a year in Ottawa killed and injured through traffic accidents.
I'm sure there are. And in fact, Rodney, if you've been paying attention to the news recently, it seems to be there are a lot of stabbings recently to me. including this terrible one with this young man from Sydney, Nova Scotia. Imagine you come here, you land a job, you're working on building the Amazon warehouse, and gosh, you get into an altercation with somebody over one of those stupid scooters. That's what they were fighting about, a stupid scooter, and he stabbed and killed. Was he 18 years old or something, right? Young guy.
19, yeah.
19.
Just moved here.
Terrible. Dawn in Ottawa. Dawn, good morning. You're on City News, Dawn. Last call of the week. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rob, and good morning.
Hi.
I have 3 issues.
Okay, we only have time for one because we only have a minute left. So.
Oh, man.
I know, I'm sorry.
Can I call back?
You can call back on Monday. Talk to Derek.
On Monday, but you aren't going to be there.
You can call back Monday, August 16th, and I'll be here.
Oh, I'll call back then, too, so I'll be quick. The people who choose not to take the vaccine, I think that one of the things that should be on their plate then is if they do get the vaccine, they should pay for the whole hospital shot.
The whole hospital shot. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, just throw the Canada Health Act right out the window.
Absolutely.
Send them the bill. Okay.
They choose not to take it.
Right.
They get sick. They pay for it.
Okay.
And they are also responsible for the Delta, the Gamma, and all the variants because the vaccine needs places that they can propagate, and they are the group that are allowing them to propagate.
Okay.
By not taking the vaccine.
Thank you, Don. Got to run. That's it. Thank you for all your kind words. Thank you to all the first-time callers as well. And we'll do the Talkback Hour again on Monday. Derek Fage will be your host. Coming up right after the news, the National Gallery of Canada, sponsor of the Rob Snow Show. We're going to talk about their big summer show, Rembrandt in Amsterdam. As well, Steve Warren on sports and Queen's Park Week in Review to wrap up the week. This is City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, July 30th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 15 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 14. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The top doctor in Ottawa breaking down what's being done to address an anticipated surge in the need for mental health care spurred by the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Medical Officer of Health Dr. Vera Etches says collectively the city's hospitals, mental health service providers, and Ottawa Public Health are looking at the priorities for care and making that case to the province. However, the doctor tells the Rob Snow Show there isn't much more money to go around.
We need to work as effectively as we can in coordination so that collectively, the services are there that people need. And I do encourage people, sometimes there's a gap.
Dr. Etches adds, OPH's role is to ensure Ottawans don't get to a point where care is needed by promoting overall health and wellness. Alex Gouge, City News.
This is the second straight day of COVID numbers over 200 in Ontario, the province with 229 more cases today, along with 11 more deaths from COVID-19. 9 additional cases of COVID in Ottawa, 2 more in Renfrew. There is 1 additional case in Eastern Ontario's health unit. Leeds Grenville Lanark had an adjustment of their figures. There was 1 fewer case. Almost 21,000 tests were completed for these numbers. City News time 11:02. The Hogsback Bridge has reopened after an extensive closure lasting about a year that started in 2019. The bridge did reopen, but since then it has been closed twice, last Friday being the latest for hydraulic issues. The NCC reports the bridge is reopened again. It did that shortly after 9 this morning. City News time 11:03. Now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
May see a few scattered showers this morning in Ottawa and then mostly to partly cloudy conditions today. Highs only 19. Clear breaks into the overnight and a cool low near 11 degrees. Sun and cloud for Saturday. Chance of showers. Highs near 21. The daytime high today 19.
And right now in Ottawa, 15 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 14. It was around breakfast time today. Ottawa Fire called to an address in Central Park. It was 7:30. A little after that, a homeowner called to report smoke inside their home. Now, everyone was told to get out immediately. When crews arrived, they were told everyone did manage to get out, but a pet was still inside. A small basement fire was put out quickly. A cat rescued and brought out to the waiting family. 2 people, though, have been temporarily displaced. City News time 11:03. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole accusing the Prime Minister of putting lives at risk, not being prepared to extract Afghans who helped Canada's mission in Afghanistan. O'Toole says our country owes a debt to the interpreters and others who worked on behalf of Canada.
We owe it to them. If any refugee needs asylum, it's people who need protection and asylum because they helped Canada.
Now, the federal government this week announced a program to fast-track applications from Afghans who aided Canada during the Afghanistan mission. In the United States, the first plane load of Afghan interpreters and the like arrived today. They have been granted refugee status there. StatsCan is estimating the economy grew by 0.7% in June as pandemic restrictions began lifting. That gain follows a couple of months of setbacks and boosts the preliminary estimate for economic growth in the second quarter to 2.5%. The figure for June and the second quarter will be finalized at the end of next month. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Still ahead, Queen's Park Week in Review with our MPPs. So much to talk about. And we'll talk about everything that the Ottawa Senators did this week. It's a very busy week. If you're a fan of the Ottawa Senators from the Sens Nation podcast, Steve Warren is coming up in about 10-15 minutes time here. But first, we're so happy that the National Gallery is an advertiser on this show, and they have a great show at the National Gallery. Rembrandt in Amsterdam is underway now. It's on now, and it goes on till September 6th. Now, you know me, fine art is not my bailiwick, but I do really like the gallery, and I really like the gallery when they have big shows like this. So we have Denise Cieli is here from the National Gallery of Canada. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Great to be on. And yes, Rembrandt in Amsterdam, creativity in competition. And you can imagine how thrilled we are to finally open our doors after months of not being able to have people just come and experience stunning works of art by what is arguably one of the most iconic artists that we all can relate to.
So tell us about, the gallery, unfortunately had to close for a while, but now is open again, and all the safety protocols are in effect and everything. But how long has this show been in the works for the gallery? How long has this been planned?
So this is the largest collection of Rembrandt works assembled on Canadian soil. So This was 5 years in the making.
5 years in the making.
Yeah, yeah. So you can imagine, and of course, borrowing works from other museums across the world, and then, of course, some of the works that exist in the gallery's national collection. But a very, very intense and robust process to make sure that there's some 100 plus works that not only feature Rembrandt specifically, but also his competitors and his rivals and his students. So it's sort of this understanding of Rembrandt during that time, what it meant to be an artist when he was painting in the Amsterdam art market. So a pretty exciting show for Ottawans and those who are, driving down the 401 or wherever it is to come and check it out until September 6th.
So it's Rembrandt, but it's so much more, thus creativity and competition, right? Creativity and competition. Tell me kind of what story is being told with this exhibition?
It is a fascinating story because, again, it is the context from when Rembrandt was painting, but also understanding that at the same time Dutch settlers were arriving in what is Turtle Island, so on Canadian shores, and entering into treaties with Algonquin, the Iroquois Confederation. So there are works by Indigenous artists, wampum belts, and just these stunning works that sort of speak to this was what was happening during Rembrandt's time. There's also the fact that as a center of global trade during Rembrandt's time, and again, he was not implicated specifically in this, but the trafficking of enslaved Africans. So
the slave trade.
Exactly.
Wow.
So there is sort of that understanding, and it lends to a much richer exhibition, and there's other installations that speak to it. But just collectively at the gallery, we're so thrilled. We've had, opening week, we've had close to 10,000 people come through our doors, and this is the best news that we can share.
That's amazing. That sounds amazing. So, it's not just about one of the great masters, right? But it's how you're telling a story, and it's kind of, it intertwines with the Dutch as a colonial power, and it sounds like it intermingles with the art of telling that story as well. That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it exactly. And it is supposed to be revealing. It is supposed to be educational and also informative. But ultimately, because we know what art can do for, especially coming out of the pandemic, it sparks conversations. It also gives you respite. Right? In some ways. To look at, I'm thinking, Rembrandt's portraiture was so iconic. He might have been the first selfie person, right? That wearing a hat and two chains, right? And then there's heroin from the Old Testament, and there's all these just stunning works of art alongside our two new installations, Rashid Johnson Capsule, which is one of our first public art installations, and Tao Lewis Symphony. So it's really just a place that you get to just get away from the pandemic for a moment, right? But gotta wear your masks, people.
Sure. Yeah, and that's one of the other things that I wanted to get into with you. Denise Cieli's here from the National Gallery. Give us kind of the rundown of the visitor experience now. If I go to the gallery, what can I expect, and what's expected of me?
Okay, so it is advanced tickets would be needed.
Okay.
It's timed entry for Rembrandt specifically, so as you'd call it, a special exhibition. There's a flat fee, so once you pay, you have access to the entire gallery. Masks are required at all times in the building, just so that we can maintain the protocols. And here's what you get to see. You see a Rashid Johnson capsule. You see Rembrandt in Amsterdam, creativity and competition. There's Tao Lewis Symphony. And then there is this stunning collection, Meekins McLaren's. It's the Cosmos Collectors, and it's prints and drawings, over 200 works. And there are several Rembrandts in there as well, Rembrandt prints and drawings. And of course, our national collection still exists. So our Indigenous and Canadian art galleries.
Sure.
So, you almost need several days to do this, but certainly we encourage folks to plan their visit ahead, purchase their tickets in advance so that they can get to see it. And I would be remiss if I did not say that on Thursday evenings, we do between 5 and 8 p.m. Free admission to the public. So.
Okay. Excellent. It sounds excellent.
Yeah. Are you coming, Rob?
Oh, I'm going to, it's on till September 6th. I won't make it in the next few weeks, but I will make it before September 6th, for sure. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, this is something I really want to see. Absolutely. Yeah. It sounds amazing. 5 years in the making, my gosh. Right?
Yes. Unbelievable. Our guests.
So it must come from collections from all over the world then, right?
Yes. So a partnership with the Städel Museum in Frankfurt, Germany, and including works from our own national collection and all over the world, absolutely. And our guest curator, Dr. Stephanie Dickey, who is an expert in these works, joined us to help curate this, along with Indigenous curators, contemporary art curators. So it's kind of, once you see it, then the art speaks to you, and you forget about the 5 years. But yes, definitely a lot of heavy lifting by so many, not only at the gallery, but across institutions to make this happen.
Excellent. Thank you so much for telling us about it. I'm so glad the gallery's back up and running and busy by the sounds of things. So that's nice.
Yes.
That's really nice. And it's nice to talk to you and talk about something other than politics. For
Indeed,
so,
indeed. Well,
thank you, Denise Cieli. We'll talk soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye from the National Gallery of Canada. Denise Cieli. 11:15. From art to sports, we do it all around here. Rob Snow Show. Steve Warren next on City News.
This affected us big time because when, you know how we are seasoned. We have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. That time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise. And the people, and for us, we have to be careful, especially with the virus going on. Did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was thought it's going to be like this. Earthquake might happen. We joke about it before. Think it might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive? That's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in the mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors or just it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy because we have to shut down completely, and this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can't go online, let's say t-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit. But when it comes to clothing, it's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. Mostly young people, but if you really want to shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You want to be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend, doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, or they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at a certain time, so I'm glad to do that.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Oh, what a week for the Ottawa Senators. Lots of wheeling, lots of dealing. Host of the Sens Nation podcast and the Steve Warren Project, Steve Warren, is back on City News. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Rob.
Now, I'm a loyal listener to the SWP. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, and encourage all the listeners to subscribe to the SWP on all the broadcasting platforms. You played hockey this week, Steve, is that right?
I played last night.
You played last night and lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, I'm a little creaky today, I got to say. I felt pretty good after it was all over. I said, okay, it didn't go so badly. And then this morning I woke up and just every joint is making noise, it seems.
It's not like playing golf, right? It's not like playing golf. Your feet might be sore, but I guess every but that must have been fun, Steve. For how long had it been since you played men's rec hockey? 2 years or something?
Well, we've had some blips where it was allowed during the process of COVID. So I did get out a couple of times over the winter, and then they shut things down again. But yeah, it's been one of the longest times since I was of my life without actually playing any hockey, and it was neat to get back and be in the dressing room. Didn't need any masks in the dressing room. Had to have it in the lobby, but not in the dressing rooms. But it was it was certainly nice to get out for sure.
Where did you play hockey, Steve?
Walter Baker.
Walter Baker. Okay, cool. That's good. Another sign that hopefully the worst is over. Fingers crossed. And gosh, I'm as the days and weeks go by, I'm kind of counting them down to the start of training camp, and then there'll be exhibition games, and before you know it, Steve, it'll be opening night against the hated Toronto Maple Leafs. I can't wait. So, Mr. Dorian, the general manager, Pierre Dorian, very busy this week. Let's run down what he did. What highlights of the week for the Ottawa Senators, Steve and Pierre Dorian. Give us your take on all the moves.
Well, I think the big one was the re-signing of his head coach in DJ Smith. I think I probably would have done the same thing and brought him back, because whatever you liked about DJ Smith 2 years ago, he's really done nothing wrong per se. He's he's one of those guys that's likable, communicates well, and he's young and relatable. And he was sort of set up to fail. Obviously, they go in a big rebuild and hire DJ Smith, and it was good to see, to the Sens' credit, that they didn't put any of that on DJ Smith. It was not a very good record. You look at the 2 years that he was the coach here, he coached 127 games and lost 79 of them. So not exactly, a must-keep-around kind of guy, but it's a unique case, and credit the Sens for not penalizing DJ Smith for the club's struggles. And now the focus turns on, okay, now you've got a team that's progressing, and now you're not going to sneak up on anybody. So it'll be interesting to see what the Sens truly have in DJ Smith now that he's got his security, the team's starting to play better. Now there's going to be some expectations and pressure, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah. So with the players, I guess the big news is the dealing of Evgeny Dadonov. What'd you think of that deal? He's gone.
I think it's fantastic. The guy was due to make $5 million for the coming season, $6.5 million the year after that. Wow. And I'm sure you agree, Rob, that's just too much for a player who delivered so little in his first season with the club. And so not only do they get out from under that contract, and that money will help them sign guys like Brady Tkachuk and Drake Batherson, which hopefully happens sooner rather than later. But not only do you unload that contract, but you get assets back in return, and a third rounder next year, and Nick Holden, who may very well prove to be part of the mix here for the coming year. It's hard to say.
Right.
He was a guy who played for Vegas last year. He was a healthy scratch some nights, but in the playoffs, he was in like 15 of their 19 games and played really well. So he's another veteran who'll come in, and you just kind of hope, Rob, that it's not like last year where you brought in Goodbranson and Braden Coburn, and those guys are good veteran soldiers and good guys in the room, but it felt like they were kind of blocking the progress of some of the kids on the blue line.
Yep.
I wonder if that may happen with Holden and with Michael Del Zotto, who they signed on day one of free agency.
Okay. So, yeah, I look at this now. Dadonov's gone. They bring in two defensemen, and I'm wondering how the depth chart looks now for the Senators' defense corps. How do you see that? Steve, who are the top six defensemen on the Ottawa Senators now?
Well, yeah, you got Shabbat, you got Zaitsev, certainly Holden and Del Zotto figure into things.
Yeah.
You got Zub still in there.
Zub, yeah, I liked him. Yeah.
But
Brandstrom was supposed to be one of their young, bright stars.
Yeah.
I wonder what his future is now. Mete, they got him for nothing. I wonder what's going to go on with him now. So
yeah, you got Josh Brown as well, and so I think that covers it. And it's fascinating. I think you bring up what I believe will be one of the most interesting storylines at training camp in September, because assuming you get Mete signed, you're going to have 7 defensemen all on one-way contracts, all who will have to clear waivers if you decided to move them downward. So outside of those 7 defensemen are Eric Brandstrom, Jacob Bernard-Docker, Lassie Thompson. These are all first-rounders who are knocking at the door to get into the NHL on a full-time basis. And with Brandstrom, I wonder about his future with this organization. How can he not? Because if you've seen everything Ottawa's done here over the last year, especially at the draft, just one big guy after another, really favoring size.
Yeah, they're going big,
I really don't feel like Eric Brandstrom has much of a future in this organization, even if everything went well for him. And the jury's still out as to whether he can be a guy who's consistently an excellent top 4 defenseman.
So, look, we got about 3 minutes left here. So they've made no secret they want a forward, a good one. And the name that keeps coming up over the last couple of days is the Boston Bruin player David Krejci. I just looked up his stats. He played 51 games in the most recent season and had 44 points. What do you think? Should they go for it or what? And what are the chances of them landing somebody like that?
Well, as always, it would depend on money and what kind of term he wants. He's a really good player still, but time is not kind. Father Time is undefeated, and I think he's pushing 36. And so he's been an excellent player for Boston for a long time, and he's got roots here. He was a Gatineau Olympic back in the day.
Oh, okay.
I think he owns property here. My understanding is he married a girl from Gatineau, so there might be a fit there. Still some skill and the kind of player that you want as a placeholder. Quality guy, still based on his stats, quite a bit of skill there. So it certainly makes sense if the price is right. Ryan Strome is another name that you keep hearing associated with the Ottawa Senators. So it's, there are options out there, but I wonder about where Eugene Melnick's headspace is at with all the guys that need to get re-signed still, like big ticket items like Tkachuk and Batherson. I wonder how much interest he has in going out and bringing in new blood that will cost a lot of money.
Okay. So with those two players, Tkachuk and Batherson, key to the whole rebuild for the Ottawa Senators. Is there like a deadline on that, Steve? How does that work with a restricted free agent?
Well, they're still without contract, just like an unrestricted free agent, but they're under club control, so they can't just wander off and sign willy-nilly somewhere else. The deadline is opening night, basically.
Okay.
They're gonna work on the assumption that they're gonna get a deal done. But this might plow through the summertime. I would have thought that something might be done by now, but there's a lot of back and forth here, and in particular with Tkachuk, it's not just about the money figure. It's about what the term will be. What do the Sens want to do? What does the Tkachuk camp want to do? And my best guess right now is that they'll do a bridge deal in something less than the 4-year mark. Because the 4-year mark, you don't want to do that because you'll get right to unrestricted free agency. The last thing you want, Rob, is to walk a guy into unrestricted free agency.
Okay. Thank you so much, Steve, for the update.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep, we'll talk soon. Steve Warren of the Steve Warren Project and the Sens Nation podcast. Coming up after the news, it's the Queen's Park Week in Review on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, July 30th. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, a mix of sunny and cloudy skies. 16 degrees in Smiths Falls. It's 15. Here's what's making news this hour. It's the second straight day of COVID numbers, over 200 in Ontario. The province reporting 229 more cases, 11 more deaths from the virus, 9 additional cases in Ottawa, 2 more in Renfrew County, 1 in Eastern Ontario, and an adjustment of cases means there's 1 fewer in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. Finance Minister Christopher Freeland says the government extending pandemic aid programs by an extra month beyond the previously planned end date. The decision means the wage and rent subsidies for businesses and income support for workers out of a job or who need to take time off to care for family or stay home sick will last until October 23rd. The Hogsback Bridge has reopened after an extensive closure lasting about a year that started in 2019. The bridge reopened. Since then, it's closed twice, last Friday being the latest for hydraulic issues. And the NCC says the bridge reopened again shortly after 9 this morning. And it was another golden day for Canada at the Tokyo Olympics. The Canadian women's 8 rowing crew captured gold, an 11th medal for Canada at the Games. They're 11th in the medal standings with 3 gold, 3 silver, and 5 bronze. All of the country's medals so far have been won by women. City News time 11:32. I'm Chris Curries. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
It's time for Queen's Park Week in Review. Much to discuss. Let me introduce everyone here. We have from the New Democrats this morning, Merritt Stiles. Good morning, Merritt Stiles.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Education critic for the New Democrats. Davenport, I think, is your riding, if I'm not mistaken.
It certainly is, yeah.
Goldie Gamari is back from the Progressive Conservatives. Good morning, Goldie.
Morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. And her riding is Carleton, of course. And keeping with the local theme, from beautiful Ottawa South, Liberal MPP and the health critic for the Ontario Liberals, John Fraser. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Rob.
It's great to hear from you. All right, I want to start with Merritt. Back to school. Premier Ford says the government's back-to-school plan will be released next week. What should be in that plan, Merritt Stiles?
Well, I guess better late than never, but we're what, 5 weeks away from schools coming back, so it's very late, and it needs to include a commitment to keeping our class sizes small, improved ventilation with public reporting, minimum standards, testing. We need to see some extra mental health supports for our kids who've been struggling. We need some curriculum adjustments. We need paid sick days for all those parents and teachers and everybody who may still have to take some time off when somebody gets sick. And we need a strategy right now to reach out to families to talk about getting their kids vaccinated before September.
Okay. John Fraser, what needs to be in the plan?
Well, again, I'll echo what Merritt said. It should have been here a lot sooner. What needs to be in the plan is smaller class sizes, better ventilation, testing and contact tracing, support for those students who slid behind in the last year, and mandatory vaccinations for frontline education workers and healthcare workers as well, too.
Okay.
We know that children under 12 are at risk because they're not vaccinated. And I think parents, with their children returning to school, want to know that the person who's helping them is vaccinated and that the classroom is safe. I think that's a critical piece. Premier Ford has said, I'm not going to do that. He said, I'm not your guy. I can't help you. Parents are just looking for their help, for his help and leadership to ensure that classrooms are safe.
Okay. I would like to see Premier Ford drive a school bus, actually. I wouldn't.
Obviously, he hasn't been driving the bus.
All right.
That's the problem.
Okay. All right. Goldie, so look, you heard from both Merritt and John here that one of the accusations is that the government is dragging its heels when it comes to releasing a plan that is being tardy, waiting until the last minute here. What do you say to that, Goldie?
Well, I would say what they call dragging its heels, we call taking taking time to think about this, taking time to look at the evidence and the data, and taking time to hear back from those health and medical professionals who are really the ones informing us on what to do in order to make sure that classrooms are safe for students, for teachers, and for parents. And, in partnership with Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health, our government is committed to getting students back into full-time, in-person learning this September. The Premier and Minister have been very clear on this, in fact, of getting students back to class. And in terms of the support that my colleagues mentioned, since the beginning of the pandemic, Ontario has, in fact, led the nation compared to each of our provincial counterparts. The total amount of COVID funding for schools has been $1.6 billion extra in support. Widespread ventilation improvements with over almost 57,000 HEPA filters produced so far. We've also had the most comprehensive masking policy. We've hired an additional 1,400 custodians. We're the only province providing public health nurses to support student health in our schools. The only province with a widespread asymptomatic testing strategy and the dollars to back it up, and the largest allocation to mental health funding for COVID-19. And on top of that, Rob, we're getting as many youth vaccinated as possible. And yesterday was an important milestone, and I really want to congratulate everyone in Ottawa and across the province, because we hit a milestone yesterday. 80% of Ontarians 12 and up have been vaccinated with their first vaccine. And not only that, 68% of Ontarians 12 and up are fully vaccinated.
Yeah, it's a good job. It's a good job. It's a good job. I know where John's party stands on this idea of mandatory vaccinations for frontline education workers, because I had the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party on my show earlier in the week, Stephen Del Duca. I know, Goldie Gamari, that the Premier has said, I don't want to impose mandatory vaccinations on anyone. He says he doesn't believe in it, but he certainly encourages everyone to get the vaccine, but he's not going to make it mandatory. What I don't know is where the New Democrats stand on this idea of making it mandatory for education workers, for frontline education workers and healthcare workers, but you're the education critic, and back to school is very much top of mind right now. So where are the New Democrats on this idea of mandatory vaccinations, like a job requirement, Merritt? Where are New Democrats coming in on this?
Well, first of all, I can't resist just commenting on something Goldie said, which is that Ontario is leading the nation on how our response to COVID in education. The only thing we led the nation on was the number of weeks that our schools were actually closed, and the amount of chaos and confusion that our kids faced. So, I start there because I think that, to be honest, Rob, like the biggest...
Maybe you should answer the question.
All right, one at a time.
Sorry, Goldie, I didn't interrupt you. The biggest issue we're facing is going to be those under 12 and the chaos and confusion that they're going to face because they are ineligible to be vaccinated. And so, you hear like there's still some gaps in the kids and certainly in education workers. And what our position has been that we're not interested in just saying, okay, it's mandatory right now without removing those barriers. I'm hearing from parents, from students.
What barriers? What barriers do you mean? What barriers?
Barriers to getting your vaccine. There are many parts of this province where people are still unable to get the vaccine. There are also definitely.
I don't know, Merritt. It seems to me that we're swimming in vaccines now, Merritt. We have local health officials who are begging people, please come and get a vaccine. Yeah. We will bring the vaccine to you, is what they're saying, Merritt.
But Rob, the other barrier is information and misinformation. And what we don't see right now is a massive push to get them vaccinated.
Okay.
I also want to say we need to add COVID to the registration of vaccines for kids in schools 100%. When school starts, you have to prove your kids had their measles vaccine, their chickenpox vaccine. Yeah. That needs to be there. And if people are going to get an exemption, then there will be, they may be treated differently. But I want to tell you, what's breaking my heart right now is that there's so many things that we could be doing better. In New York, for example, they are ensuring a minimum standard of 2 HEPA filters per class. They're doing air quality checks. Our custodians don't have the means to do that. So when the government comes out next week with their big plan and says, oh, we've done this and this and this, I can tell you it's a patchwork out there. So
okay.
all those
Hold on. Hold on. If I could just jump in here, and Goldie, don't worry, I'm going to get to you before we stop, okay? But John, your leader has said mandatory. School bus driver, custodian, librarian, teacher, TA, all of it, okay? How does your party's position, say, differ from what we just heard from Merritt Stiles, would you say?
Well, they're not setting what I would say is a standard or an expectation that I think most people have for those settings. And look, it's a lot of work. Merritt's right, but you have to set that standard. You know, it's not like vaccinations aren't mandatory for healthcare workers and education workers for other diseases. Like, we have a really serious disease here. We have to set the standard. Merritt's right. We have to educate people. We have to redeploy people if we have to, or if they want to change, make a choice to change whatever they're doing to another profession, help them do that. But the standard has to be set that the expectation is that if you're working in a school, that you're vaccinated.
Okay.
Now, if people, you have to respect the Human Rights Code.
Right.
People have, people have.
And if they don't, John, what's the alternative? I mean, you're not going to dismiss a teacher or a librarian, are you? Are you going to say what? Mask up, regular testing, these kinds of things, or
you have to take a look at whether that's going to be effective, whether you need to redeploy somebody to reduce the risk, or whether you need to say to somebody like, maybe this is not, maybe you want to do something else inside the system, or change your profession. That's
okay. All right. Yeah. Well, you might require legislation because the ONA fought back against mandatory flu shots and won it twice at arbitration on flu shots. So
4 out of 5 people are vaccinated.
Yeah,
that's a great number. We got to get higher. We're at the hardest part of the pandemic, getting the next 10%. And unless we set a standard, unless we say we need to do this, you personally need to be responsible for this, we're not going to get there.
All right. So what do you think of the position? Because Premier Ford has said no to this, Goldie. Like, no, we're not going to mandate vaccines for frontline healthcare workers or education workers. What do you think of the position here?
Rob, I support that position. Ultimately, as a government, we can't force people to take vaccines. But what we can do is encourage people to do it and to lead by example. I mean, I'm fully vaccinated. My family's fully vaccinated. We're spreading the message. We're getting it out there. Vaccines are available everywhere now. Anyone who wants vaccines can get it. The clinics, they're walk-in clinics. In fact, I was speaking with Anthony DeMonte from the City of Ottawa. And, City of Ottawa and Ottawa Public Health are going to be closing down some of their locations because there's just not enough demand. So there certainly isn't a shortage of vaccines. We're encouraging everyone to get vaccinated. And Rob, I think the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, when you're looking at Ontario's vaccination rate, our vaccination rate is higher than in some jurisdictions where vaccines have been mandated for frontline healthcare and education workers. So, I mean, I don't think we need to force anyone to get a vaccine. Ontarians, again, I applaud everyone in Ottawa and in Ontario for really, coming together and getting vaccinated. Right. The one question I had, though, I just wanted to get some clarification from Merritt because she never really answered the question. But did I actually understand her to say that without answering whether or not frontline workers should be vaccinated, she thinks that kids should be vaccinated and that children need to have a COVID vaccine passport? Is that the party's position?
Well, actually, I'm happy to answer that. We said all along, it should be part of the register. Like, I don't know, Goldie, I have 2 kids who've gone through the public education system, and every kid in this province who's in the public education system, to go to class, you have to be, you have to say you've had these vaccines. And there's an exemption process, which allows you to get, signed off if it's a medical reason why you can't have it or other reasons. And there's a whole process around that. So it's the same thing that applies to all the other
and what's
vaccines.
What's your position for the teachers?
as I said, I think we need to push to deal with some of the misinformation out there. I mean, I agree with like some of the issues Rob raised. I think that we're going to end up fighting this issue in the courts otherwise. So, and our leader has been really clear. Like we have to be out there pushing. This is the big push, and that gap, that percentage of the population that isn't getting vaccinated.
Mr. Del Duca's position may be just a position for the sake of having a position. I don't know, but I can tell you, and we have to stop here because there are other things we have to get into. I had the head of the OSSTF on my show this week. 60,000 members. Not all teachers, a lot of support staff too, but a lot of teachers. No way to mandatory vaccination. No way. Non-starter for them. We got to stop. Be right back. I want to talk about $234 million, a lot of money. But is it enough to clear the backlog? 16 million procedures in the medical backlog. We'll talk about that next. Queen's Park Week in Review. Rob Snow Show on City News.
Well, we're celebrating our 43rd year. It's still family operated. We're in our second generation. We, pre-COVID, we're at about 1,000 employees. We have 20 stores from coast to coast in Canada. We do our own manufacturing. Right here in Ottawa, we have about 160 people that support Canadian-made manufacturing in addition to our retail stores. Taking you back to mid-March and the impact of the pandemic on Lee Valley. Lee Valley was actually in a tough spot. We had just launched our website a few months prior to that, and we were going through, a fairly typical deployment dive where your customers retract as they adjust to the website. And then under stress already, this pandemic hit. And in the early days, it was pretty critical. It hit us really hard. Stores were closed. We weren't sure what to do. So we had to go right into survival mode. As a result, we had to take our workforce almost back to half of where we were at because the stores were closed. And with 20 stores, that's a big retail workforce. But what we were able to do pretty quickly, with a little luck, being essential, selling tools and hardware, we were able to adjust our business model, with respect to the stores and our fulfillment operation. That new website that we were under stress worked out well for us because as the world was under house arrest, people were looking to online, and the conversion to our online sales in some cases almost doubled. And we saw tremendous interest in things to do at home. Where we were lucky once again and fortunate is that our product offering. Work at home tools, craft, hobbies, backyard, container gardening, you name it. What we sold was really appealing to people. With respect to our stores, Lee Valley, a rare unknown fact was that we were one of the pioneers of curbside pickup. We've been doing it for 25 years. Pretty much dove right into the application to help with the contactless shopping right away. We took the application, and it's not like a Apple application where you have to download it to your phone and clutter up your phone. This is literally resides right on our website. So you walk into our store with your phone, you pull up our website, and there's a little scan icon. You just tap that, select your store, off you go. You go through the showroom, you scan product, you can read more about it. You can check the on hand, you can add it to your cart, continue to shop, and when you're ready, you just submit it to the counter. We'll go pick it for you. We'll call out your name, we'll check you out, send you on your way. You haven't touched anything. It's completely safe, and it's using a device you're comfortable with and a website that you're familiar with. Amazingly, 9 out of 10 people that used it loved it and want to use it again.
Community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Back with the second half of Queen's Park Week in Review with New Democrat Merritt Stiles, Progressive Conservative Goldie Gamari, and Liberal John Fraser. Our 3 MPPs for today, and we thank them for taking the time. Provincial government announced this week a $234 million investment to help clear the backlog of medical procedures. John, I want to start with you because you're the health critic for the Ontario Liberal Party in the Ontario legislature. What do you think of this this plan here.
I think it's good news for people who have had to wait for surgery or diagnostic procedure. The only caveat I would add to that is, we used to measure wait times in Ontario. We had a wait time strategy, so people could know how long it took to get a surgery at this hospital, that hospital, all the way across Ontario, or an MRI. I haven't seen much of that since the government's come to power. I think we need to be able to, we need to know where the goalposts. We need to be able to measure. So the government didn't announce yesterday how effectively they're going to measure that and report that back to us, because we need to know, is $234 million enough?
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe it's just a good start. Maybe it's enough. But we need to measure, and the government has not come forward and said, this is how we're going to let you know how we're moving along. Because this is, people's lives are on hold because of this, and I think they'd like to know how much longer they're going to be waiting.
Okay. Merritt Stiles, your thoughts on this, please.
Well, it's as John said. I mean, this is a major source of anxiety for so many families out there. It's probably one of the biggest issues in my community that I'm hearing from people about is this backlog. And while it's a staff, what I'm hearing from hospital CEOs and surgeons and such is that it's too little funding still, and not enough to plan. And even the Financial Accountability Office said that this falls about $700 million short of where we should be at. There's also no timeline. There's no targets. There's no reporting out, as John mentioned. And I guess probably the thing that I'm most concerned about is, and I know we see this all across the province, which is nurses and other frontline healthcare heroes are so burned out, and they're leaving their jobs. They're exhausted, and there was not a penny here for additional staffing and no strategy to address that. And so, those are some of the things that I'm hearing. They're big concerns because, as I said, we're talking about people who have been waiting for, life-saving, ultimately really important surgery. Their lives are on hold, and the impact on families across the province is them. So I'm concerned that it's not really enough. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe some benchmarking, by the sounds of things, is one of the issues. Goldie, what's your reaction to the news, please? Thank you.
Rob, from day one, our government has been committed to ending hallway healthcare. It's something that we campaigned upon, and we campaigned on building an accessible, integrated healthcare system that's organized around the needs of Ontario's patients. And obviously the pandemic put a dent in that. But regardless of the challenges that we have faced by the pandemic, we've continued to make significant progress in addressing wait times for surgeries and other procedures. And in fact, wait times right now are in a much better situation than was expected mere months ago. So if we're talking about benchmarks, the benchmarks that were predicted for today, a couple months ago, we've already exceeded that. And, with the $234 million plan that we've recently announced, this is going to enable the healthcare system to operate at 110 to 115% capacity. It's also going to allow them to perform up to 67,000 additional surgeries and procedures, as well as up to 135,000 more diagnostic imaging hours to address wait times for surgeries and procedures. So I think ultimately, this is good news for Ontario. This is just another example of our commitment, our government's commitment to Ontarians and to supporting Ontario through this pandemic.
All right, we only have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to need a pretty quick answer here from each and every one of you. But we've seen that some provinces have moved in the direction of offering financial incentives, lottery jackpots, scholarships to encourage people to get vaccinated. Should Ontario be doing the same thing? John, what do you think, John?
Look, I think we have to use every tool that's available to us.
Okay.
And if a small investment that's going to avoid an exponentially greater cost is what we need to do, then let's do it. Let's look at all the things that other places have done, because we're at the hardest part of the pandemic, is getting that last 10% that we need to get. And we need to do everything we can to do that.
All right, John. Merritt? Go ahead, Merritt.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. There are a lot of things that we haven't tried here, and we need to do it fast. So, I mean, some of the other tactics we could look at include, I'd say, replacing missed wages for people who don't have paid sick days when they go to get the shot, taking the shots directly to those people in their homes, which some municipalities have done, but is still way behind in other areas. There's a lot of things we haven't tried. So, but those sorts of incentives, we got to get creative here. And like I said before, I mean, this is it. Like, we got to get as many people vaccinated before September so we can get schools reopened and our economy really restarted.
All right. Last word to you, Goldie Gamari.
Thanks, Rob. So Dr. Moore, Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ontario, has made it very clear that we're working with municipalities. Dr. Moore is following the data on a daily basis. The province is working with public health units to improve vaccination rates through targeted strategies, including mobile clinics and community-based pop-ups. So ultimately, it's any decision we make will be with the guidance and with the evidence and with the expertise of Dr. Moore. But at this point, again, I want to congratulate all of Ottawa and all of Ontarians. 80% first vaccination, over 68% second vaccination. I think we're in a really good place to get those numbers where they need to be.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for this week. A great pleasure to speak to all three of you, and be safe.
Thanks, Rob.
Talk soon. Yep. Merritt Stiles from the New Democrats, John Fraser from the Liberals, Goldie Gamari from the PCs. I'm Rob Snow. I'll be back on the 16th of August. Derek Fage fills in for me while I'm away. Sam LaPrade Show coming up next on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays at 9 on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This hour of The Rob Snow Show is brought.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.